Well, happy Saturday, SMITE fans. You are watching the SPL powered, of course, by our friends at Alienware. Shoutouts, as always, to Alienware for being our title sponsor this year in the SPL. Make sure to check them out at Alienware on Twitter and on Instagram, and AlienwareArena.com for giveaways and so much more. They've outfitted all of our pros, all of our esports staff with some awesome hardware, and you can get in on that as well. So shoutouts to Alienware for sponsoring Season 8 of the SPL. But I am not alone. Agro is with me. And Agro, before we jump at all into today, which should be great as well, yesterday was chaotic, wasn't it? And it
sure was.
The first set goes on. You get Titans Valkyries. That one's about as cut and dry as it gets, right? Titans win that one 2-0. Yep. And then the Bolts beat the Dragons, but it wasn't just a casual, they pull one over on the Dragons by the end. They controlled those games. And then there's beef on Twitter at the end of the day. What's your take on the day there yesterday?
I'm loving it, man. I just love it top to bottom. It's exciting, SMITE, that we got a chance to see. I thought the Bolts played super well. The Dragons definitely looked mortal in that set. And then, look, I mean, I don't really have a side in the Hurry Ven
sure.
beef. I think that it's just fun to be a part of, and it's good for the league. You know, it gets people talking and gets people more invested. I hope that fans are picking their sides, and then, of course, going to shop.smiteproleague.com in order to buy jerseys for their favorite players and their favorite team's gear. Look, man, the more people talking, the better it is for the league. There's no doubt about that.
100%. Then I started some very real, true beef with you guys on Twitter, so make sure to go check out.
I almost dunked you on it, and then I decided not to. You're welcome. I really thought about it.
Considered it.
He did. Well, you put it in the group DMs. Do you think this is funny? And I almost copy pasted it and tweeted it. I almost posted it before you as a way to dunk you, but then decided that was too late, so I did.
Well, look, if you missed out on any of the action after the day yesterday, check out this quick recap of the Twitter SMITE Beef League, as we're calling it.
On May 14, 2021, the Jade Dragons' winning streak came to an abrupt end when the Olympus Bolts showed up ready to play. These are the tweets that followed.
You can trash talk today at venenu_, but I'm not the one who tried to lock my players into the roster early out of fear of not making it into the league.
Go ahead and message every single player in the league like at the end of every year due to you being terrified of not getting in. See you next time, face throwing a kiss.
You stick to messaging the only ones that would consider taking you.
I stick to messaging the players I think are good and have potential, not the cause I am terrified. Stay salty, Tower Boy.
There's something about the Twitter, the text-to-speech voice that just makes that all that much better than our man Mountain Goat on Twitter made this fight promo, Salty Tower Boy Fight of the Week, Venenu versus Hurry Wind. Yes, hello, I'm here for the fight, aren't we all? Yeah, the rematch between these two teams suddenly got a lot more exciting, especially if the Bolts are able to continue on the let's call it maybe a warpath over their last few games that roster's been on. Bolts up against the Kings tomorrow. That'll be an important matchup to look out for. Jade Dragons back in action against the Silver Scarabs as well. So if either of those teams lose tomorrow, all the trash talking that happened yesterday maybe goes a bit by the wayside. But let's focus on Saturday. The teams from yesterday get to take a bit of a breather, unless you're called the Tartarus Titans. You're going up against the Oni Warriors first. And then the Leviathans and the Valkyries will round out this Saturday in SPL action. And the standings starting to feel some implications here, Agro. The Jade Dragons, they finally have blood drawn against them. The Olympus Bolts and the Atlantis Leviathans all now up there, tied for first. The Kings and the Titans starting to surge up there. It's very close-knit kind of on either half of the standings at the moment.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch, man, because even these teams like the Valkyries, Warriors, and Scarabs, who are sitting at that 1-4, you never know exactly what you're going to get from them. We've seen really good play from all three of those teams during their struggles, so it's been very, very hard to predict what these teams are going to do, but that's what makes it more fun. You know, a lot more close matchups this year.
And look, one of those teams, the Titans, if they're able to continue to rise to the occasion as we've seen them do on their last two matchups, they're going to make things in the middle and in the top of the pack a lot more interesting here. Scary D has been on a tear over the last few games that this team has had. I think that is a large factor in why the Titans are suddenly starting to do well. But another beneficiary, or the team is a beneficiary of another guy who's starting to play really well, and that's Benji out of the solo lane as well. 9-0-2 and 8-1-5 in his two games yesterday against the Valkyries. And a trend like that is scary for the rest of the league.
This is a guy who has shown so many times throughout his career that he can just win you games by himself. And when Benji is going to do that, it makes your team rest easy at night, because that's the way he's playing Smite right now. Now, of course, it's not just Benji. It's Scary and Benji working together, playing very, very well coming into this set, because they made a concerted effort to just play that right side of the map. And I think that's the right direction for the Titans. You know, they've got a lot that they need to work on still, even with them playing better. Every team has a lot they need to work on. No reason to make it harder than it needs to be. You know, simplify the game. Let's just get Benji ahead. Let's get him a god that he can carry with. And let's just play the right side of the map and see what happens. And that's what they did yesterday. And I like that strategy quite a bit for them. I think that I would anticipate that we're going to see that again from them today, because make someone prove that they can beat you on it. That's my thought process for sure.
Yeah, Benji has 26 kills and 4 deaths in the last 4 games that this Tartarus Titans team has played. So, going up against that right side pressure, I mean, you look at yesterday, poor Ducky, like, literally did not have a chance, it felt like, just because of the insurmountable pressure that was placed on the right-hand side. Today, that's something that the Oni Warriors, the Titans' opponents, have to be privy to, right? And someone like Nika over there in the solo lane, who, with the rest of this Oni Warriors team, has had a bit of a slow starter year here in Season 8. But if there is any team or any guy in the solo lane that can step up and can withstand some of that pressure, it might be Nika.
Definitely. I mean, he's used to it from the Nika queues at the very least, getting camped and having a lot of pressure on his side of the map. But Nika has looked very good this year. While the rest of the Warriors have struggled a little bit, I do think Nika has been their most consistent performer. Of course, it is worth noting that he and Vote the only ones on the East Coast side of America, and Dardes and Cuvo both playing from Europe, and then Neil from the west coast of Canada. So they kind of need these side laners to be those carries in order to try and keep this team afloat until everyone can get here. But so far, I think Nika's done his job in that regard. I've been having fun watching him play.
He's one of the solo laners that's really forged this Tsukiyomi into some level of success here as well. So I'm interested picks bans-wise, where we might start to see some overlap. A lot of the solo laners playing very similar gods. You know, a lot of the itemization caters to certain gods at the moment, so there's going to be overlap in that area as well. But it's going to be an important day for all of the Oni Warriors, especially for Kivo Fred. Kivo Fred versus Scary D, I mean, not only in the jungle, but old teammates. Do you think there's any extra oomph in this matchup with kind of the old PK roster from last year being sprinkled between these two teams?
Of course, there's a little bit, but if you watched the Roster Apocalypse video on the SMITE Pro YouTube, as everyone should have, you'd know that this team wanted to stay together and just were unable to due to being unable to find an ADC that they wanted to play with. So I don't think there's any bad blood between Scary and Cuvo or Neil and Paul. You know, those guys, I'm sure, are just going to have some fun playing against one another.
That's right. You want to beat your old teammates, but not in a mean way, I guess. I don't know, in the same way you want to beat me at video games, Aggro. It's all fun and games.
No, that's
right?
mean. No, I want to make you feel bad about yourself every time. Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, well, good. I'm going to feel bad about myself while the camera stays on my single, and we'll welcome in Nika for the pre-game interview. Nika is here with us, a guy who, what do you call him, the Nika Q? So he feels bad sometimes in his ranked game there.
The leader.
Every night.
Look, Nika, we talked a little bit about it, Aggro and I did in this pregame segment. The right side of the map for this Tartarus Titans team has just been very strong over their last couple of sets. The Scary D plus Benji combo has just kind of been an onslaught. Is that something you're prepared to deal with today?
Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with that. I mean, like you said, I get a lot of practice with playing around solo lane, and I think that's how we're comfortable playing with right now as well. Just like trying to play through either side lane, just for our practice and stuff. And I mean, I always prefer it. Like every player is gonna prefer when the game's played for them, right? Like,
of course,
there's gonna be a lot of action over there, and should just be a good time, I think. But yeah, I definitely
Mika,
expect him to play solo for sure.
It's a new dawn in the SPL. You know, we're trash talking everybody now. There's a ton of beef. So tell me how much better you are than Benji and how trashy he is over there in solo.
I'm not gonna do that. Benji's the one solo laner I'll always have respect for. That's the GOAT right there. Come on. Stop trying to build a false narrative, man. I'm not gonna be out
I'm just
here
doing my
taking
job
weak
out here,
shots.
Mika. What do you want from me, man? Your job is to hit
I
the
respect
Q button.
that. I
My
respect
job is
that.
to create some storylines. You know, I'm just doing what I can.
Well,
That's fair.
the Nika and Benji beef is not a storyline, I guess, that is going to get built up here in this matchup. I asked Aggro, you kind of have an ear to Neil and Kivo Fred and those guys. Do you think there's anything extra in this matchup going up against a couple of their old teammates?
I don't think there's any like bad blood between them. So,
Right.
I mean, I feel like everyone wants to beat their old teammates, so maybe they'll fire them up a little bit more. But yeah, I don't think there's gonna be any Smite beef league like last night from this set anyway. Sorry to let everyone down.
We might be able to get a breather on Twitter after the SPL wraps up today. Nika, thanks for sitting down with us, and best of luck in your matchup today.
Thank you.
Yep. And look, if you're a fan of the Tartarus Titans, the Oni Warriors, and you liked the jersey that Nika was wearing there, make sure to check out Inside Apparel Company, our official apparel sponsor this year in the SPL. It's shop.smiteproleague.com. And they got all this sweet stuff. Yeah, Bisky Lady, excuse me, one of the biggest pushers of Olympus Bolts gear out there, and for good reason. All the gear is awesome looking, and the Bolts, their stock is rising. So if we're going to lean back into the cryptocurrency and GameStop conversation from yesterday, buy now on all your Bolts gear. Buy to the moon. Inside Apparel Company, shop.smiteproleague.com, Olympus Bolts. Hashtag all of that, and you're guaranteed more interactions on Twitter. So thanks again to the Inside Apparel Company for sponsoring us this year in the SPL. Look, that is the pinnacle of ad reads right there, and I won't hear anything else otherwise. All right, we talked a lot about the solo lane matchup here, Aggro. How important do you think the jungle matchup is going to be here? Kivo Fred against his old teammate in Scary D, who's now also playing in the jungle.
It's always huge. Jungle always the most important role on the map overall. And particularly for these two junglers, they both have had pretty slow starts, I would say, to this season. I mean, obviously Scary overall it's totally understandable. He's moving the role for the very first time. He's looked much better as of late. Really on the Robin pick in particular, I'm curious to see what the Warriors are going to do about that Robin selection. Are you going to ban it in the top half of the draft? That's what the Valkyries did in game 2 of yesterday's set. Obviously didn't go to their liking, but overall, I think that might be a worthwhile strategy up against Scary until he proves that he has more than the Robin in his back pocket. And on the other side for Kivo Fred last year really was a pinnacle of consistency towards the back end of the season, but had those inconsistent moments beforehand. Again, understanding his situation, playing from Europe, all that kind of stuff is important, but certainly Fred's positioning around the map and where he's been hasn't been quite as clean as what we saw from him during last year. So both these teams are going to need the junglers to step up if they want to rise up in the standings.
And Aggro, I think, if we're just kind of working our way down the roster at this point, mid lane has kind of been sort of an opposite interaction for both Dardes and Paul, where Paul in the last 2 games, granted, it's been a lot of the situation around Paul, and of course Paul is one of the best mid laners in the world, and cannot take that away from him. Those games have just been going very well for this Tartarus Titans team. Paul has died a single time in the last 4 games. On the flip side of that coin, Dardes has gotten a single kill in the last 3 games. That's not a trend I expect to continue. There's got to be a bounce back here at some point for this Oni Warriors mid laner.
Has to be, because Dardes is just too good to continue to struggle this way. And you understand the situation that he's in, but at the same time, this mid 3v3 for the Warriors continues to lack a little bit. And it's such a difference for those 3 players that were on SSG last year, Nika, right. Dardes, Vote, those guys, that whole team's identity was centered around their mid 3v3 and how potent that was. Now their team identity is the opposite, in that the mid 3v3 is struggling more than any other part of their roster, and they have to play through the side lanes. So it makes sense to me that they're struggling. These 3 guys are having a totally different sort of experience than what they had last year. You look at what Neil and Cuvo did last year. They also played mostly through mid, though it was more so in the team fighting phase. Right. Things are different now for these 5 players. So it makes sense that they've struggled to me. Just a matter of how long it's going to take them to adjust their play style and their picks in order to try and match that. You heard Nika in his interview say they like to play more through the solo side. I think that's a good identification of where their strengths are as we currently stand. Let the mid 3v3 wait a little bit to find its strength until they're more comfortable with each other.
I think suddenly, this is a matchup between Paul and Dardes. You want to look at pick ban contest, potentially Morgan in that conversation. It's been a lot of Morgan, a lot of Aphrodite for Dardes. Paul back-to-back Morgan games against the Valkyries yesterday, undying in both of those games. So there's definitely some strategy around the mid lane where we start to maybe see some overlap in that regard. The Hunter role continues to be in an interesting spot where aggro. A lot of stuff is quiet over there. You get a little interaction, maybe some contest, maybe some fighting in the first few minutes of the game. Then once the supports rotate out, the Hunters free and clear to kind of farm away, scale themselves up into that late game. Jingwei has started to be on the rise here a little bit. Vote has played Jingwei 3 out of the last 6 games. Is that a trend, even outside of just Vote in the Hunter matchup here today? Do you expect to see a lot more Jingwei over the coming weeks?
I mean, with Onher starting to get banned by a couple teams, it's Heimdall, of course, that's right behind Onher, and then after that, it's Jing. So if the top one is getting taken away, it makes sense that the third best pick ends up rising up a little bit in value. So yeah, I do expect to see Jingwei continue to be played and picked up if the trend of taking Onher away from these Hunters continues as it is right now.
There you go. Without further ado, picks and bans for Game 1 between the Tartarus Titans and the Oni Warriors kicks off. Certainly no bad blood in this matchup, but a couple old World Championship teammates going up against one another, so a little extra spice, maybe, to start off this fine Saturday in SPL action. All smiles from all the players on both sides from what we've seen so far. King Arthur taken away alongside the Athena. I don't expect that to change anytime soon, especially with the solo lane matchup, as we talked about here. King Arthur looks good in both hands. Tiamat is in an interesting spot, aggro, alongside what last year was kind of like the Umoja, where some can, some can't. Is that your current diagnosis on the Tiamat? If there are just some mid laners that can make this pick work, and that's when it's worth banning out?
Yeah, I do think so. I mean, you have to make teams prove to you that they can use the Tiamat to her full effectiveness, and then at that point, it's probably worth your ban. And certainly Paul has proven that. I think it's good to take that away from him, no doubt about it.
Well, the second wave, or the second final bans here in the first wave come through. It is Morgan. We wondered if that would be prioritized. It was here by the Oni Warriors alongside a Sobek to round out the first 6 bans of the draft so far. Heimdall, now top priority because it was on her. Heimdall right up top there. You wonder then if Jingwei a little bit later on for Vote ends up being the pick here. And then Scylla over on the other side. So this is now a new one for this Oni Warriors team where Dardes in his last 6 games has either played Aphrodite twice, Morrigan 3 times, Discordia once. So a little bit of a different, maybe more standard look in setup and execution here for the Oni Warriors in their first 2 picks.
Yeah, I like the idea. I don't know how much Dardes has played the Scylla in his pro career. I can't imagine it's very much, but assume that with how popular it has been towards the end of Season 7 and now in Season 8, that it's something that he's been putting significant time into practicing, and Niels Ymir, definitely a priority pick for them. I was going to say the solo lanes are both open right now in Cucullin with that huge pressure that he's going to bring and be so impactful in that lane, and Wukong, the other god that gets banned a decent amount when we're talking about solo lane bans. Paul goes back to the Giannis, and Paul has played this a little bit recently.
Yep.
I haven't seen it be as impactful as, it's always going to be measured up against Hurry's Giannis, and I don't expect anyone to match that with any sort of consistency. But it is interesting to me that the Titans prioritize it this heavily when Aurora could have picked up a god here. Umoja was open. He could have gone to that. He's loved the Kabrakan pick, but probably wants to wait a little bit on it. Bacchus, something that he's liked. You have options right now, and the Titans didn't get Robin, so I'd anticipate that being the first ban, and it is.
Yeah,
that they could have gone Cucullin Robin in that slot and felt pretty good about it. I'm surprised that they went Giannis instead.
Right, to back up your claims there, aggro, 1 game in the last 6 for Paul was on this Giannis. 2 kills, 0 deaths. Backed up by 16 assists, but it's really that kill pressure that wasn't necessarily there the entire time for Paul out of that mid lane. So looked good in the kills or the deaths in the assist department maybe a little bit more in the kills department here. It gives the Titans the edge that they need. Now, Nemesis, the first jungler locked in here with no jungle bans taken away in the first 6 here. So, for at least game 1 here between the Warriors and the Titans aggro, Nemesis is the top priority jungle.
Makes sense because that's a pick that Scary has gone to a couple times. It's a classic pick for Fred. I have not been particularly impressed with the Nemesis in not just in Fred's hands, but in really anybody's hands so far in Season 8. I don't think of her as a priority pick in the jungle right now from what I've seen. Tsukiyomi being open, it's Set being open. I mean, those are gods that I've been more impressed with, certainly, than the Nemesis, but for whatever reason, teams are really liking it. They keep going to her, so they must feel like she's doing something for them in scrims.
And again, to back up your thoughts there, 4 out of the last 6 games for Cuvo Fred have been on the Nemesis. Not the most recent 2 losses back-to-back to the Leviathans. Cuvo Fred played the Fenrir, the Osiris, and then a loss to the Bolts 2-0, where a couple Nemesis losses there for Cuvo Fred. So certainly a pick that we've seen him on here before. We wondered then where vote would fall down to in the Hunter category with the On Her banned out and the Heimdall taken away by the Titans here in aggro. Chernobog is the answer.
Not the Jingwei, which I do think would have been solid here for him, but instead the Chernobog just trying to match that global pressure that the Giannis is going to put on. I'm just a fan of Chernobog. I think he's solid. Not going to hear me complain about that pick a whole lot. Mercury would be interesting in here, Dave. I feel like everyone is getting ahead of themselves a little bit on this shell nerf. It's not in yet. You got to wait until next week in order for that to be the case. We saw Dodgy yesterday hovering the Mercury. I think the Camazotz does make more sense. Yep. There's not a lot of hard CC here for the Titans, but this is a pick that Scary is comfortable on. He played it a ton in solo lane last year, so you're not worried about him being uncomfortable on this pick. I like it quite a bit.
And we wondered, aggro, we talked a little bit about solo lane and where we would start to see those picks bridge or not bridge across from one another. And in that conversation, we mentioned how a couple of games in the last 6 for Nika have been on the Tsukiyomi. Both of them wins over the Solar Scarabs, combining for 13 kills, 2 deaths, and 13 assists on those back-to-back games. Tsukiyomi now proven to be a pick that can work in the right hands in that solo lane.
And I think it is solid. Maybe a better jungler than a solo laner, but still a good pick in either role. So I like this selection for Nika. It does leave them a little bit CC light. I mean, what do you have to really threaten these beads? It's just that Ymir freeze or a Scylla root. Maybe you've got a beads and Nemesis slow from here and there, but for the most part, I think the Titans are going to be pretty safe on their purification beads. I would pick up Aegis certainly at level 12 with how much damage they have, but a sprint here from Aurora would do wonders up against what the Oni Warriors have. Just getting that extra little bit of mobility. And even the chase down potential, you already have quite a bit of it with how much distance this team can cover between the Giannis, the Fafnir, the Heim. They've got a lot. If you add in a sprint to that, you're going to be feeling strong.
And the answer to, well, I guess the Tsukiyomi was the answer to Benji's Kukulkan there. We know how Benji is on this pick. What do you think of the relative impact that something like a Kukulkan provides out of the solo lane versus something like the Tsukiyomi over there for Nika?
Certainly more pressure on blue buffs for the Kukulkan than the Tsukiyomi. Suki wants to try and get to the 2-3 items position. He's going to have poke advantage, just trying to whittle down that Kukulkan in lane, but I imagine it'll be a lot of Benji just hard shoving the wave and then standing in the jungle and waiting for something to happen and being ready for any sort of fight that might break out. So you could probably threaten some half rotations towards mid. Tsukiyomi feels really strong. Once he gets a few items online, his dive is fantastic. It's hard for even Giannis to get away from him, because as long as he hits one of those piercing moonlight beams, you can travel to him. I like the selection here for Nika, but I'm still worried about the lack of CC here for the Oni Warriors. And if Dardes isn't as comfortable on this Scylla as he has been on some of his other picks in the past, we could see it. I'm a little bit worried about the mid 3v3 just based on Dardes' lack of history on the Scylla, though of course I've got trust in him as a player. He's one of the best mid laners in the league. And then Fred on this Nemesis, which as you've mentioned has really struggled for them, and they've picked it quite a bit. We're going to have to see more from Fred on this pick.
And you know who we haven't really highlighted all that much here and deserves some light here before going into game 1 are both of these supports here. Neil up against Aurora that's a storied matchup right between these two, but Neil has struggled throughout the onset of this year. Again, the Oni Warriors as a team have, and so the support as a big part of that team probably will as well. Neil, 4, 42, and 51 assists throughout their first few sets so far played here. Is the Ymir pick the one, Aggro, that gets Neo and the rest of this Oni Warriors team back on that horse and charging towards a win?
I mean, he played it at the World's Finals and looked really good on it, changed the course of the games in that set. So certainly if you're thinking about his impact level, it can be very, very high. And it's going to need to be, because Cyclone on this Heimdall yesterday just went absolutely monkey mode. Like, he went off on this pick.
Yep.
You're going to have to be able to contain him come team fight time, because when Cyclone was looking like Cyclone in that last set for sure up against the Valkyries yesterday. I'm excited to see what he's going to do up against the Warriors today.
Oh, and then there's a Coerce there, and that just kind of feels good if you're feeling good as Cyclone spin. Anyway, game number 1, Tartarus Titans versus Oni Warriors. Let's kick it off.
Thank you, Dolson and Aggro. Finch and Gormizer here with Doug providing the views as we go into this game 1 between two teams that looked like super teams coming into Season 8, but haven't quite hit that mark just yet. Maybe this will be the momentum spark for one of those squads moving forward. Gore, you heard them talking a little bit about some of the CC here for the Warriors and would the Titans respect it, and it looks like no. We've seen supports taking beads in solo, or tanks taking beads in solo, and supports taking them as well, but horrific from Aurora. It's Blink over there for Benji. Maybe they aren't all that worried about the Warriors CC.
And I think the true indicator of that, like, your front lines, they'll be flexible with it, right? And you can actually see, like, Nika makes more sense. He's on an assassin, has gone for the beads. But Benji having Blink, it kind of falls on the fence. Scary D also having Blink, there's no worries about the CC, right? Like, that's where it's like a very solid statement for them. And it's really interesting, specifically with the horrific emblem coming online so early. I mean, it's something that we got to see a few times last year. Like, it wasn't often that it was picked up. I think Aurora was the one who did it, though. And that's dangerous territory. Vote early on, you know, Aggro had mentioned something like a Jingwei maybe replacing this Chernobog, but unless the peel from Neil is going to be on point, Vote, one good slow from Aurora is going to lock them down enough for Cyclone, or potentially they get a gank for Scary to be able to pick up some kills. So that's something they got to be really wary of. Luckily, they do have that sprint to help counteract it.
That's what they'll need, as Neil gets a bit aggressive. Can't quite catch up to Aurora and Cyclone spin, though, so they fall back towards safety. You mentioned that their Blink was there for both of them as a freeze lands, but Cyclone spin does not panic, holds onto the beads, and keeps moving. As maybe there could even be a little bit more coming here from this one. Looks like no, though. They'll back off. But this Scary D conversation, I think, is important. Him on this Camazot's pick gives him a real chance to be the pace setter in this game. And obviously he's had some struggles kind of acclimating back to the jungle here in this season, but putting him on something like the Camazots, which has such potential to stick to these targets with that Bat Out of Hell ultimate and does so much burst damage quickly, I think this could be something that can help get Scary back in his rhythm and is exactly the type of tool he needs right now. Do you like it up against this Oni Warriors draft? Think you'll be able to stick to Dardaz and Vote relatively easily?
I'm going to give a judgment withheld. Like, I like the Camazots because, like you said, like, it's a good pick for Scary. But I feel like what we've seen him be aggressive on and successful with in the jungle, the playstyle doesn't quite match what the Camazots brings to me.
Sure.
So maybe at level 5, maybe when that Bat Out of Hell comes onto the equation and he gets aggressive and gets in the fight, maybe that conversation ends up coming up and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, he's going to play just as aggressive or he's going to be able to find that success. But I feel like, especially considering how it was played in solo, there's a little bit of a difference here for Scary. So while he's familiar with the kit, I want to see how he can adapt it to make it successful for the Titans in more ways than just a god that he's familiar with and something that really screams as a piloting, kind of pioneering pick for them in this game. As of right now, though, I mean, I do like it, like safety-wise, into the Warriors, just because I know it's going to be able to live. I think its engage is going to be really solid, and the setup as well for like someone like Paul here on the Yanis, for Benji as well, right beside him. Like, there's going to be a lot of capabilities I think this Camazots is going to bring to the table. I just have the questions more around whether or not Scary D is going to make sure that they happen.
You're going to make sure he's careful at the very least, though, in this early game. A freeze, then a Nim ultimate and I'm a Monster could easily be a death sentence for him. So while I do like the idea of him taking this Camazots, kind of being a solo agent, being aggressive, maybe even diving alongside Benji, just got to make sure, at least in the early pre-level 12, that he picks his spots a little carefully, because certainly the burst potential with one target is there right now for the Oni Warriors with this mid 3v3 draft they have at their disposal. Just look at where these teams are planning to go. It's Conduit Gem there for Paul to get him started. As Cuvo Fred has to blink over the wall. He was the one aggressed on by Paul and Scary. Both the junglers going Eye of the Jungle. Tank boots already for Neil, but Aurora picked up an early Benevolence. Some slight differences in these builds for the most part. It looks like Dardes instead has that Sands of Time, and maybe there should be aggression in duo. Slows are landing on the vote, and Aurora there to keep going, but Cyclone too far. They won't find much more in the back of this, so they keep things fairly standard in the build department here, Goremizer, in this early game. Nothing too crazy to worry about.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think both of these teams are really just trying to figure out. This honestly kind of feels like punching each other, right? Trying to get the feel where you're going to be aggressive. But the Titans been able to amass a very small gold lead, but a gold lead nonetheless, about 600, 700 that is going their way. So I'm looking for the ganks. I don't think either Cuvo or Scary are going to be a lot of hands-on in this early game. I think a lot of the ganks are going to be driven by the supports right now. Fafnir's also been kind of jumping up in terms of I guess, prowess lately. Like, it feels like people are focusing a little more for him. Like, not enough that I'm saying he's a mainstay, but he's getting picked up around the same amounts as he did in what, Season 7, right? Where he's kind of sprinkled in with your Ymirs and et cetera, et cetera. Kuzenbo maybe falling off a little bit harder. But I wouldn't be surprised if those are the rotations that make the big difference here for anybody, once the supports get involved.
It looked like Scary was considering some buff invades, ends up giving up on those though once he sees the presence from Cubo Fred. But now Neomon, the target, he's still only level 4, so transformation from Aurora. He leaps in, the stun's there, and Neomon low. In comes Vote, but first blood already goes to the Titans thanks to Scary D, and they're not done yet. There's a little bit of a disengage from the squad, but Nika continues in with that piercing moonlight, but interrupted by Benji, and a miscalculation as Scary gets a double. The Titans eventually force a fight in the jungle and come out way ahead.
I mean, just great play from them to be able to get aggressive. I actually think, and more important than anything, 2 kills for Scary, plus a kill onto Nika. This Tsukuyomi for the Warriors has been so insanely helpful for them. Like, there were games, I think it was one of the only ones they've been able to win, where it really did feel like it was all done by Nika. The rest of the team was kind of along for the ride. So I think doubly important for Scary to get a little bit of a lead there, as well as showcase how important he's going to be in comparison, or I should say, in compatibility with Paul here for the jungle. And making sure that they shut down that solo lane is definitely going to be a good start. Plus, you get Benji a little bit ahead. That's a scary thought in any game, Finch.
Yes, and he was pretty instrumental in making sure they got that second kill, interrupting Nika mid-stun. Kind of gave some room for the backline of the Titans to reposition in that fight. You saw just now Neomon got a good wall freeze and a Cyclone spin, but he's continued to be patient with those relics, not overreacting just because there's some presence there from the support. Knew that Vote was out of mana, out of position, couldn't really follow up, kept onto that, and that's what you'll see these backliners do a whole lot. Sometimes we've seen him get them killed, but for the most part, they are extending the value of those relics by being patient when they choose to use them. And now, maybe another rotation from the Titans over to the right side of the map. Greater Scorpion could certainly be a target for him, but it's just now Aurora over here. Everyone else had backed down. And Scary D kind of sticking to his own side of the jungle. But they know blue buff about to spawn. Maybe they want to be here for it, but the Warriors already in position to defend, so they likely won't be able to.
They're going to be able to get aggressive here. I don't know if you want to invest everything in the Neil, but they're going to be able to.
Oh no, Neomon and Cubo Fred couldn't have been on the same page. Neil was in position to defend, but Cubo Fred said, no, I don't want anything to do with that in my wildest dreams, my man. I don't want it. And I think Cubo was right. They were getting out-rotated, but seems like they couldn't communicate on that one and get it correct, and Neomon becomes a sitting duck.
I like the call from the Titans, though. This is very proactive play. Again, something that was kind of missing. Like, the first few games of theirs, sets of theirs, didn't necessarily feel bad. It just felt disjointed, right? Like, everybody was kind of playing their own game. Yeah. It didn't seem to unite on any single front. This feels much more like a united team. Like, they figured out who the shot calling needs to be, their communications issues, whatever was going on with them behind the scenes seems to have come together. Again, it's going to be something that they have to test, I think, even more so against things like the Leviathans. I'd say the Bolts now, after what happened yesterday, teams like that, the Dragons as well. But when it comes down to beating on the Warriors, so far, for 8 minutes now, it has been very helpful for them. And look at this, Finch. I mean, just a Scorpion, a few kills, some buff invades, but they're up 3-0 3,000 gold almost. I mean, 2,500 more like, but it's an insane lead that they've been able to amass without really having to drive home huge objectives just yet. I think if you're the Warriors, you're starting to get worried, especially once Gorp on that left-hand side gets taken down. You got to focus on Gold Furies, any of those, the Pyromancer that's going to come in. Like, the Titans are putting themselves in a position to win harder, right? They've already got this early game really well under control. It can spiral incredibly fast and be a 22, 23-minute game.
And it's come off this right side pressure. Scary D and Aurora have been real problems on this right side. When Aurora transforms, listen, I don't think Fafnir becomes a great support until he's inside that Dragon form, and that's what Aurora's been leveraging well. Scary has been a real bully over here too. It's made it real difficult for the Warriors to know what exactly they can do on this side of the map. Looks like with the blue buff spawning, Cuvo, Fred is already here, Neilmon, Dardez, and Nika all on their way. So they do want to defend, and this time the Titans just a little bit late. So they won't get to the blue buff in time. It's already taken, and they're not going to try and force a fight with the Warriors getting that far back. That is what we've got to see more of from these Titans if they want to make sure they can defend that blue buff a bit more regularly.
Yeah, I like the way the Warriors are able to rotate in. Again, just kind of put up the shields, right? Make sure that blue buff is going to go this way. It's a small victory is the best way I can describe it, right? It is something that you are able to secure your own blue buff, and you kind of put a stand that says, you know what, we don't want to fight you, but we're going to take away all reasons you have to be over here. And any amount of experience you can get back that has been stripped from you at this point should help alleviate some of the pressure, the giant XP gaps as well as the gold gaps that have been picked up here by the Titans. And this is the awkward one, Finch. I mean, we and you had this conversation a few weeks ago where it was the conversation of, like, we kept seeing this trend of whoever picked up the Scorpion would then immediately lose the Gold Fury. And in this case, it's whoever picks up the Scorpion on left seems to be losing the Pyromancer. This is a good call from the Titans.
Good recognition that not only is no one here now, but even if they were, the Titans like their odds in a fight. That is the Pyromancer going down for the Titans 10.5 minutes into this game as they continue to expand their lead and seem quite comfortable with this right side pressure. And that's become a bit of an Achilles heel for everyone. It's why the Dragons lost yesterday. The Bolts had real right side pressure with Jake's presence over there and with how well Laswell was playing. It's exactly what's happening here again in this game as Nika and Benji exchange a few blows, but nothing really that substantial. Though, it's about 2 items finished for everyone. The biggest disparity looks like that Aurora already has his Thebes up and stacking, and Neil still on that tier 1 glowing emerald.
That's going to be a big deal. Like, it's one thing where we have this conversation sometimes about, like, picking up sovereignty over the Thebes and being able to get some prots and maybe immediate health versus what you're going to get as Thebes stacks up. But just straight up having Thebes prior to the other player having that, I mean, you're going to be able to not only finish your stacks better, but you're going to have a lot more health. You're going to be able to be more active in these team fights. And with just a small level lead, grant now it doesn't necessarily mean too much, but level 12, that means you're going to have a second relic online before Neil is going to be able to pick it up. And if they continue at this rate, it's going to happen sooner rather than later here for the Warriors. So watch for Aurora, because I think he's going to actually end up being a pretty big power player here. Normally supports, I would even argue, with Thebes fully stacked, you're not feeling as safe as possible. You really want maybe a prod item on right afterward before you can start feeling like the true tankiness that you have as a Guardian. But right now, he's got enough of a level curve and maybe a little bit of a lead over Neil that he's definitely going to have more presence as a frontliner.
Yeah, and his ADC just finished up Executioner and is back in the fray, whereas Vote hasn't been able to back and pick that one up just yet. So maybe they'll want to use that small window as Aurora does step up, find himself a nice hammer, but Vote, of course, with Aurora there alone, doesn't end up using any relics in response. Doesn't look like the Titans are trying to necessarily force this fight at the Fury just yet if they don't have to. Maybe want to get a little bit of time for Scary to make sure that he's 100% comfortable coming back in before they really start things up over there. But again, they don't necessarily have to go over there in any type of hurry, I wouldn't say, Gore. But it looks like they maybe now are ready to start it up. A 4-man grouping, and they start up this Fury. Looks like they know, but not going to actually start this one up. They managed to get Vote's ult out of it, a bit of a bluff. And look at that reaction. So Vote comes in, has to dash into the wall, and now needs to run. And Psycho's been dropping the ultimate to keep up the chase. And Vote now settling in a bad position if Aurora can get any closer, but with Neomal right behind, should be safe. So the Fury not done, but Vote's ultimate at least taken.
I mean, ends up trading ult for ult there for Cyclone Spin. Much more important, I think, for Vote, who's going to be able to rotate anywhere on the map. But it is an interesting conversation. I feel like Cyclone wanted to force out one of those relics. He really was pushing to try and just force him to panic Beads, force him to panic Aegis, think something else is going to go wrong. Unfortunately, it was just a little bit slow from the rest of the Titans to collapse in. So now there's Oracle Harpies coming up here on the left. That's probably going to be one of the bigger objectives for these two teams. Neither one, like you said, putting a lot of pressure towards the Fury just yet. And with a ward already there, plus now the Oracle Harpies, the Warriors are going to know when this Fury is started up if they're not the ones doing it. And with the positioning, I mean, you can see Scary D immediately coming over to the left side of the jungle, even though Blue Buff is about to respawn. So he's starting to put a little more pressure over here with this side of the map and for this side of his team. And it might be leading towards a Fury. So it'll all come down to the reaction times of the Warriors, specifically how they handle it. Neil doesn't have a blink like we typically see for supports early on, and so his engage is maybe going to take a little bit longer to get onto something like a Fury.
Let's see, as Neil Ma is a bit low. Through space and time used here as well, and that doesn't quite lock them down. But maybe that still opens up an avenue here as Cyclone Spin starts up this Fury transformation from Aurora. But in come the Warriors to try and contest. The Fury now low. Aurora leaps in, and Neil Maul low, so he keeps him zoned. But Hero Fred drops the ult to Aurora, but it's Scary, who dives in and deletes Neil in an instant. But Scary low himself, forced to use Bat out of Hell to retreat, and the Fury has been reset. So Neil Maul's life at this point has been sacrificed, but worth it because it keeps that Fury standing.
And at the end of the day, I think a good kill pickup for the Titans. It's one of those things that comes out maybe as a little bit of a wash. You don't fall further behind, but you still lose Neil. So Vacuum, not like ignoring objective-wise, Scary getting out alive. It's a good sign for him. Like you said, forces the Bat out of Hell. A few ults used there from the Titans without a lot to show for it. So maybe a bigger win for the Warriors than they'd think. But also that comes with the asterisk at the very end. Yes, that was a good fight for you. You're 4,000 gold down. It's kind of devastating in that point. But 3 of the 4 kills for the Titans are all onto Neil. And that is something I personally, I start to condone after a while, only because there's so much pressure you can put on him where it stops being worthwhile for you, right? The investment to kill him falls off. And like you all of a sudden, well, I'm having to drop 3, 4, 5 abilities in order to get this one support. Right now, Neil's not anywhere near as far behind as you really think he should be with 3 deaths. So it's making me wonder if that's where their investment should be. For team fights, get rid of the front line 10 times out of 10. It makes it so awkward for Dardes, Vote, and Nika in this case as well to really decide whether or not they want to join into the fight if the Ymir's not there. But if you're just looking for some solo picks, I think some of those squishies would be nice and isolated, easy to pick on. Speaking of easy to pick on, Aurora's kind of alone right now.
Yeah, he's just stepping up, looking for any action he can get. Scary D finds Vote and likes his options to trade. It is worth noting the Warriors got that Pyromancer and didn't have to give up the Gold Fury to do it. If they can still defend here, it's a win for them, but Aurora does not seem to turn. Even with Nika now showing up and dealing out some poke, he'll retreat thanks to a portal coming out from Paul. And still no Fury actually started up. Maybe the Titans just want to control the vision, bait in a little bit more out of the Warriors. Beads are down for Cupo Fred. I'm sure he'd much rather take this fight 30 seconds from now when he has that added safety.
Right now, once again, it feels like Aurora a little too deep. Has that Dragon Form, though, so immunity in that, plus the ability to, well, first off, nice big stuns, but also kind of empower his team behind him. That horrific being down is maybe the biggest thing on the board. Like, beads are about to come up for Cuvo, so that's going to be helpful for him, but not having that horrific strips away some of the aggression that the Titans have been able to have and fueling a lot of their fights. Wind Demon just now finished for Cyclone Spin. I mean, they're playing this one patient. I like the way the Titans are kind of, they keep throwing out the fishing line, right? Like, they want a bite from the Warriors, and they've gotten 4. They haven't been able to get much more than that. They aren't really locking on for as heavily as they would like. Neil Ma looks like he's going to be going into some procs, whereas a little more health online there for Aurora. I think you had mentioned that just a second ago. So he is going to be, once he finishes a couple of protections items, very difficult to burn through, right? Right now he can take a lot of damage because he has extra numbers on his health bar. But soon enough, that health is going to be protected. Make it even more difficult to kill him. The front line is probably the most devastating part of this game to me mainly because you have two big tanky bodies. Like Cucullin and Fafnir are nothing to scoff at in the middle of a battle, especially these late game 20+ minute fights, 25 minutes in. And Nika, I mean, you can build as hybrid as you want. You can get a lot of tank items online like he has. Tsukuyomi doesn't get the same scaling as a Cucullin. So theoretically, you're still going to be able to live. In fact, it helps his dive. It's really good on Tsukuyomi, so I think this is not going to be as big a wash as it could be. But it is still going to be a small lack that they have. Nika is going to be the most prevalent person for them in terms of dive. They might need him right now.
Quick. Yeah, the Fury now down to a quarter HP, and no one for the Warriors can make their way in. The Titans secure the first gold Fury of this game through space and time used to provide an escape path if needed for the Titans. There is no Pyromancer to go fight over at this moment. The Warriors already grabbed him. Scary D finds a leap over the wall from Neomon, retreats back towards safety. So some big spectrals coming in for both teams really at this point. Benji just finished one, Aurora's on his way. Nika and Neil both have him too to deal with these ADCs and how strong Crit is at this point. And with the Warriors having that, that's catching them up a little bit in terms of this itemization where they were behind. At least for now, before the Titans are able to continue leveraging their lead. And it did just extend out even further, which makes life much harder for the Warriors at this point in the game, who don't seem to know where exactly they can go. It's been more about trying to limit their losses at this point, Gore, rather than being able to make any proactive moves to get them back into this game. The Titans, even though it's been slow, have done a good job of keeping their lead and now finding a way to finally extend it.
Yeah, it's that weird sentiment for the Warriors where they didn't lose anymore, but like you said, they didn't necessarily do anything to start winning the game. The gap just stayed the same and kind of stagnant, which I would argue, depending on how the games are going, is a little bit of a win for you. But at this point, they do need to start finding a little bit more. They got that Pyromancer last time. That's about to respawn over here, but they definitely don't seem to be in a good position to try and lock this one down. In fact, if anything, the Titans are the ones grouping up. A lot of presence over here on the right-hand side of the map. The only person missing is going to be Cyclone Spin, hanging out in his own lane. And with 4 people, well, now 2 of them backed, that's at least enough to thwart the Warriors from getting themselves a Pyromancer. Maybe not enough to pick it up for themselves anymore. I think that's kind of the goal. If the Titans can just stop the Warriors from getting anything to fight back, keep them locked down, ideally to then get it themselves a few minutes after. Now looks like the rotation for the Pyro coming through. That's going to be the kind of play that really keeps the Warriors just locked out of this game.
So the Pyromancer in their sights, Warriors close, but Dardez not really looking here. He's probably their best steal opportunity. Meanwhile, looping up behind, but none of that happens in time. The Pyromancer goes to the Titans. Meanwhile, Cyclone Spin looking for a vote over in left. Neither ADC is in this battle, but Vote could join at any time if he so chose. And Cyclone Spin tried to keep him locked down in left as Cubo Fred now has Aurora stuck, but a portal proving Giannis' strength allows Aurora to retreat. Meanwhile, Cyclone Spin continues. His best way to help his team at this point is to keep Vote here and continue this pressure. But I don't know if they're just gonna, Vote's just gonna let him back, not in his face like this.
I just think this is so clean from the Titans right now. I mean, there's a little bit of clapback from the Warriors, but it just feels like they haven't been able to find the 5v5 they want. Speaking of 5v5, at least 2-on-1 over here. Cyclone's been looking to fight back, and look at the damage he does. I mean, he sends Vote off through the realms, and he's willing to take the fight, and now he has Paul.
Yeah, feels confident. Through space and time used, didn't land for any damage. But I think Cyclone's been really trusting his damage output. Shell came out from him alongside Horrific from Aurora. Meanwhile, Sprint, Sunder, Blink used on the Oni Warrior side of things. So a couple relics down on each side. Maybe not everyone feeling its full strength and wouldn't mind having a reset to get back and finish some key items like this Staff of Myrmidon, like this Heartseeker, Pestilence, Short Sword, that are all coming in for the Titans to give them an even greater chance in this next team fight where they're already up 5,000 gold, maybe even a little bit beyond that. It's going to be a tough one for the Warriors, but who do you want the Warriors to kind of focus on in this engagement? Who's the priority member for the Warriors to remove from this Titans comp?
My mind wants to drift to Scary, but I feel like it's kind of a cop-out answer to say, yeah, well, the jungler, right? Because I don't know that Scary, even though he's facilitating a lot of this and kind of retroactively maybe even picking up the kills, right? He's got 3 of the 4. I don't know that all of it is behind him. If you can kill off Benji, which that's a tall order, prior to a fight, that's going to be able to help you. but maybe Paul, which is difficult to do. He's on Yanis. He's already kind of easy to, or already easily able to evade you. And now, of course, Yanis facilitating that even more so by making him use portals throughout all of that. If his ult is up as well as his relics, he's going to be fine. But that damage from the Yanis is really kind of the sneaker and sleeper of this team, where it just comes through and you don't realize it. Like, Unstable Vortex just claps you if you're, your Cuvo. All of a sudden, you're sitting at 2/3 HP because Paul just decided 1/3 of it doesn't deserve to exist anymore. And you can even see with the way that he's kind of positioned, it's enough to be timid and get damage through the wall.
Nice little root into crush combo there from the Warriors, and that does send Scary D back a bit. He is Camazot, so there are some sustain options. It looks like he'll just return to base and come back the hard way. The Oni Warriors think that's enough of a victory to start up their namesake, the Oni. Fury Freeze lands on Debenji, but the objective has been leashed. It's back to full HP. The Titans have done enough to give time for Scary D to rejoin this fight. But Gore, it sounded to me like from what you said, there's not a whole lot of good targets for the Warriors to look at, really. Nearly everyone on the list going to be tough for the Warriors to lock down. As Aurora, the first one, Freeze lands, but Aurora not deterred. He transforms through space and time for Paul, comes through, but a good wall from Neil deters all of this aggression. Through space and time used horizontally, not vertically. But it's the disengage from the Warriors that the Titans are happy to see. They'll come back to the Fury, and they've got it low already with Coerce, with Fafnir backing them up, and the Titans take the Oni Fury away from the Warriors and send the Titans running on the back of some good fight from the Warriors. But maybe now they have a chance to lock down Aurora, dropping the ultimate from Cubo. I'm a monster too. And support traded for Oni Fury.
Yeah, I mean, support for Oni Fury, that's worthwhile, but support plus Oni Fury, or you get Oni Fury and 4 ultimates on the other side, right? I think Aurora is just fine taking that loss, but they do need to be a little more present over here on the right side of the map. It's going to be Pyromancer respawning. I can't believe this, no. They're going to start up the Fire Giant. Kukulkan's here. I mean, even with Aurora missing, this seems dangerous to try and go for.
This is risky, and it's Benji's job to get in there, but the Warriors secure the objective, but they lose Neomar right off the bat. Nika might be the next target. He's got beads, though, and he will retreat through space and time. Connects. That brings Nika down lower, but even still, hard to take him. But Dardes ends up isolated. Cyclone Spin goes for the ult. Can't connect, but they've got Dardes locked down all the same, and he can't make it through the portal. A kill for Cyclone Spin to give him 2. And that means the Warriors only have Fire Giant remaining on Nika, Cuvo, and Vote. The Titans want to use this opportunity to burn down a Tier 2 in right.
Theoretically, Vote having that means there's a lot of opportunities for them to start knocking down towers, but you're going to have to win some fights to get to those towers, and right now that does not seem like it's going to be easily done. I think good from the Warriors to secure that. Risky call, albeit, especially with Dardes getting isolated. At the end of the day, this Fire Giant power play, I won't be surprised if it ends up showing maybe some negative numbers on the sides of the Warriors afterward, because, yeah, as of right now, it's negative 4,000 gold. They haven't really been able to find a whole ton. Yeah. And they just keep losing a little bit more. I think Vote having it's going to be a big play, but they have to win another clean fight or get the Tartarus Titans on the back foot, like when they're really kind of awkwardly going back to base, maybe find a single pick. Either way, it's got to find an opening here.
A fight on 2 fronts. Scary D being dove by the Warriors, and they have him. Meanwhile, Aurora looking for a dive on his own. He retreats back and helps delete Cubo Fred because Cyclo Spin is swinging 3 big crits in a row. And Cubo Fred, a distant memory forced into the afterlife. So bloodshed on both sides. And really, Gore, I think the best thing the Warriors did here was keep the Fire Giant out of the hands of the Titans. It might not set up for them to do a whole lot of aggressive pushing on their own, but at the very least, it slows down this Titans push.
I mean, do you ever feel residual damage? Like, outside of game, I feel like I felt that one hitting me from here. At least the heat from those damage numbers coming off. Cubo is definitely going to be rethinking maybe some build strategy. That is an unfortunate scenario, though. That's another Fire Giant buff down. Again, they haven't really been able to clap back. All 5 towers that were standing at the beginning of this Fire Giant still standing on the other side. They got a single kill in all of that as well. Luckily it was onto Scary, but it's only enough to slow things down. Maybe not enough to pull things completely back. In fact, this is awkward, Finch. With 2 people with Fire Giant buff, I actually think the Titans could still stand to defend this Tier 1 if the Warriors get aggressive. I don't think you die for it. I think you could make a stand under it and quickly give it up. It should die pretty quickly no matter what. But this is definitely not where they wanted to be if you're the Oni Warriors. Primal Fury is going to be coming up relatively soon, but Pyromancer's the big neutral objective on board right now. It looks more and more like the Titans are in a better position to really collapse in on an objective like this. The response from the Warriors is going to keep things interesting. The ward vision has been interesting as well. A lot of red wards over there on the left-hand side of the map. A couple of blue ones dropped in here and in between. But it's mainly Titan vision over here on the right-hand side, so they know what's going on, at least the positioning of the Warriors as well.
Quick burn, though, on that Pyromancer for the Warriors. They steal one more thing on this map away and keep themselves in this game. Still certainly a good position for the Titans to be in, where their backline is at full build, as is Benji, their solo laner. But so is Vote. With everything done, that Rod coming in just now for Dardes means he's pretty close too, just needs to upgrade that starter. But Nika's catch caught up as well. For the most part, this lead for the Titans already only coming up in smaller places than it would have had this been the 18-minute mark. So the Warriors have done quite a bit to get this game back to a winnable state for them. The Titans, though, don't have a ton of time left, where just keeping things even gets them a lead. They're going to have to find a way to make sure with this next Fire Giant spawning in just about a minute that they are there first and the ones that could potentially grab it. But it looks like the Warriors' focus is more on this Fury that's about to spawn.
Yeah, I think this makes sense, right? With the way the last Fire Giant went, they kind of want to just be able to secure it a little bit better. We had mentioned it, you've kind of passively said it, but this Coerce on the side of the Titans there for Aurora, it makes the objective shred insanely solid. Yeah, that's going to be really good damage. I mean, look, if you're trying to win a Primal Fury, that's a good way to start things off.
Yeah, forcing Scary D to back right away, and he will be backing all the way to the base. Now the Fury started up, and it belongs to the Warriors. Primal, just with the Doctor ordered, with a Fire Giant fight on the way, and will be making their lives that much easier once they get there. But the Titans can still show up for a Fire Giant defense here, Gore, and I don't know if the fight's going to be quite as easy. They got to be careful. These freezes from Neil, if he's able to find big two-man freezes into Crush from Dardes, they're going to win a whole lot of fights. Maybe spread out a bit is the order for the Titans.
I mean, they managed to get the Primal Fury. Again, helps them burn this down a little faster. The Coerce on the other side gonna still help out the Titans, right? They don't necessarily need a Primal Fury. I think the only thing that's scarier to me than an entire team with Coerce would be an entire team that has Merlin on it with Coerce.
Whoa, Warriors!
Fire Giant, I mean, yeah, it's getting shredded fast, but the Warriors are here, Finch. I don't know if this is a sure thing.
They got to get in there sooner rather than later, but looks like the DPS on the objective has been dropped. The Titans want the fight in the end. Aurora's already transformed. He leaps in and Vote, the furthest member forward, and forced to drop his beads through space and time. Gives some avenues in for the Titans, and they sure will use it. Stun lands on to Neil. Dardes goes up into I'm a Monster. Will he even get any confirmed? There is the stun. Hits Benji, but he tickles him at this point in the game. My goodness, the Titans seem to be shrugging off any damage the Warriors can put out.
Now, I would argue that's a bigger fight than it seems, right? No kills come out of that one, but a lot of relics burned, mainly defensive relics coming down from the Warriors and aggressive relics from the Titans. But I'm a Monster's offline. Therefore, yes, theoretically, you have all the damage you need to confirm yourselves a Fire Giant without worrying about the Warriors stealing it too easily. And it seems like the Titans are on the same page. They still want to kill, though, to make sure that they're a little more solidified in their capabilities here. This is the awkward part of the Fire Giant dance, right? Where you need the farm. You don't necessarily want to spend any minutes kind of dead in the water because, admittedly, the Warriors are making this game a little closer bit by bit. I mean, almost just counting pennies all the way up until that gold lead could potentially disappear. But they're still doing it, and that's what matters most to them. And at this point, you know, the only big level discrepancy is going to be in the supports. Neil still 2 down from Aurora, but he's high enough to have already upgraded his starter item, so he's not necessarily worried about that. So this is an important win for the Titans. If the Oni Warriors get this FG and win a fight, I mean, look, there's 5 towers standing on the board. That's, what, 4,500 just in Tier 2s alone? Like, that's a lot of gold that you're going to be able to make up in an instant. Add the 2 Tier 1s onto that. Add a potential Oni Fury after that, since it's going to be respawning in about 2.5-ish minutes. It makes it a lot easier for them to fight back into this. Just because they're down doesn't mean they're anywhere near out of this, even though the Titans have what still feels like a solid lead. They just have to figure out how to maintain a grip on it. And the longer they wait, I mean, now I'm a Monster already is back up. Same thing for most of those relics that were burned in that last engagement. What I thought was going to be a big fight, really kind of dictating the pace of the Fire Giant, hasn't really opened up the door I thought it would.
Looks like both ADCs have sold their boots for Morningstar, though, at this point in their build. So these ADCs are about as strong as they're ever going to get. The only big power spike left for them is like a 3K pod or something like that. The supports still have a big difference. Mantle of Discord is there for Aurora, but not for Neo Ma just yet. But everywhere else, things look pretty even in terms of everyone has their starters upgraded and relics available and ready to go for this next fight. So if you're the Warriors, I don't know if you're too worried about the numbers that much at this point. Certainly still would rather have them in your favor, but they can fight into this for sure at this point in the game. They'll start up Pyro and end Pyro relatively quickly. And you talked about those towers still being up. It's a good thing Vote gets that tier 1 over in left. They are still worth gold, and that's big, but they're also kind of just in the way. And they want this Titan to be as easy to get so that they don't have to full-on DSI the Titans to have a chance to win this game. They might need to win 2 fights to try and close this one out with the way the map state is.
When I had mentioned that, yeah, there's 5,500 gold still sitting just on the map, waiting for the Warriors to come through and try to take it. Now, we're down to 5,000 with the drop of the tier 1, but that's the thing that's really interesting to me is opening up the avenue, because win conditions has been a much bigger conversation, I think, this time around, the state of the map, right? It's not outlandish if the Warriors get a Fire Giant to think that they might actually need 2 fights to really win from this point. They have to break down a couple of tier 2s. With 4 towers standing, the Titan's going to be tanky. So, yeah, respawn timers might be in your favor, but tower plus Phoenix plus Titan time all within a 30, 40-second window. So maybe you're trying to rush a little bit too much, especially considering the way these fights have kind of lagged on a little bit longer. It might not be enough for the Warriors to get a good enough grip on the game. Whereas 1 win for the Titans, there's 2 Phoenixes exposed. They can already knock it down.
And Neil and Aurora both already taking damage. Vote not here yet, but he can always join with the ult. But Neo Ma being removed too quickly. Aurora will get the kill credit for it, and the Titans find a huge pick at the start of this engagement. Though Cyclone spin low, in comes Vote to try and provide some backup, and he's losing the duel with Benji, forced to back up. It's going to be tough for the Warriors from this position. A lot of pressure onto Nika, who can't really match the frontlining presence that a Guardian or a Warrior can do at this point. He is a bit more on the damage side. Is Cubo Fred now in danger of being isolated? He does drop his ultimate. No chance he is going to win that one, though. Paul gets in close. Unstable Vortex should be enough for the kill, but Blink from Cubo too good. Maybe weaving in an auto there, but he would have been slowed by it. Meanwhile, Nika going to commit onto Scary D. He has gotten in there, but I don't think he expected Cyclone Spin to be right there and ready for the damage with the ultimate from Cyclone Spin off the mark. Meanwhile, Paul is low on the front side of this fight, forced to retreat himself as Vote, right in the thick of things, tries to stay tall up against Benji, but cannot do it and forced to retreat.
Now, I'm going to give him credit because I know we've seen at least 1 hit, and I'm sure there's been a few others, but Cyclone has not necessarily been mastering these ults. So far, it doesn't matter. The crit, the damage is just so good. Tartarus is almost dead.
And yeah, should have a potential, but he steps up with Tartarus, finds the crush, and Cyclone Spin finds a coffin. So Benji trying to close the gap. Can't be done by Scary either, up in bat out of hell. And that might have just kept the Warriors in this fight. Cyclone Spin's DPS was huge for it, so Cubo Fred steps up, sees a chance to get Scary, who leaps over the wall, but Cubo Fred is there and waiting, and the wall from Neo Ma is a death sentence. The Warriors with the kill on the Cyclone, the kill onto Scary, and put themselves right back into this late game FG discussion.
What a well-placed wall by Neil. I mean, you can't write it better than that one. Just a little bit of a gap to give Scary hope, all while making sure that he still goes down, and Aurora just a little late, maybe just not enough damage there to secure himself an FG. Warriors get it, and Finch, this is where that conversation comes back in. It's not an easy run it down mid, win the game scenario. They do have to do their due diligence here. Start knocking down towers, probably win another fight. They've got 30 seconds without Scary D, so that's going to be a 4v5 that they can maybe capitalize on. Should at least guarantee a Phoenix pretty easily. It's the question of trying to get into the Titan room and win the game here. I'm just not sure. They need a really big performance or a really big mistake from the Titans to make sure that it just completely falls into their lap.
This might be sort of the research that sets up for the paper later. We'll see how the Warriors play it out, but this could be laying the groundwork for 1 more siege later on in the game that closes this out with still so many towers up. Looks like they're going to go grab this Fury, and it looks like it's the Oni Fury before they make their big push. That'll help them out once they take a reset, buy some items, because I know Neil has enough at this point for that 6th item. He just hasn't backed yet. And Benji and Aurora looking to punish anyone who chooses to lazy back. I doubt they really want this 5-on-2 fight. So they'll jump in, force the Oni Warriors to waste a little bit of extra time on this FG buff, and even steal some camps on the backside of it. A little bit gained back for the Titans, but this is all Warriors for the next 2.5 minutes and where they choose to go once they do come back out. I want to go ahead back and buy this last item. Yeah, as soon as possible. It looks like he does finally go back.
I see.
Being able to finalize this, I like the fact that the Titans are getting aggressive. And not really what I expected to see, if I'm being honest, after the Warriors get that Fire Giant. But being able to knock it down there, actually, for the first time, I think this game, now 3,000 gold at a deficit. But there's going to be what I expected a little bit more. Not going to be too confident in their ability to try and knock down towers win this fight. I think they can put up a fight around a tier 2, though. Like, I don't think that you have to absolutely give up these last 2 towers. It's probably safer for you to just let the towers fall by the wayside and then stand under the Phoenix. But realistically, you can get a little bit of damage, maybe some relics out under a tier 2, then start to fall back. But they have to be grouped up, and right now, I mean, I see 3 members kind of split apart over here on left, 2 members backing on right. The Titans need to collapse quickly.
The Warriors are all the way in. Cubo Fred got the tier 2 in mid. The left side Phoenix being shredded, so Scary and Benji have engaged. Knock up big and gets the beats out from Vote, and Paul buries Vote with a through space and time that completely flattens him. And they catch Neomar. Shard device comes out, but Cyclone Spin will not be denied. Cubo Fred, kind of all on his own, pushes up that wave, but that's about all he can do. He, Nika, and Dardes are just going to have to fall back and play some defense now, but they still got mid and left Phoenix. No, they lost 2 lives, but still feels good for the Warriors if they can just keep the Titans out of their base and from getting a Phoenix in these next 40 seconds.
The best case scenario for you, right? Like where you get yourselves, a good defense, you kill off 2 of them, you might even be able to clap back. But look at the fire minions over there on right, look at the minions over there on left. Even if you get this mid Phoenix, there's so much pressure on your base that the Titans aren't going to be able to just run in and 3v5 this without taking a lot of damage to their Titan in the process. Although, the way things are going, slow fire minions there on left and a cleared up wave there by Scary.
Man.
If they push this hard, they could try to get something out of it. I don't know if it's a win state, but it could be a couple kills.
Aurora was on Dardes, but Cyclone Spin just falls to the dive from Cubo Fred and Nika. I'm a Monster does not connect, but Aurora and Benji have bitten off way more than they expected to chew. Here at this point, the stun not going to be enough to lock down Aurora there. Looks like Mantle came in clutch for him. Through space and time is an escape pod for this Tartarus Titans team that overcommitted. Without Cyclone Spin's damage, this defense nigh untenable. An amazing position for the Warriors. They dragged this back from the grave and now have a chance to put this game to bed.
One of those portals seemed ridiculously long. Good disengage. With 30 seconds, like you said, without Cyclone, this is a really difficult spot to be in. Minions on left. Somebody's got to look over there. All of a sudden, it becomes a 3v5 instead of a 4v5 because you have to focus your attention. Oh, hey, you take a little bit too much poke, got to go back to the fountain. Well, now it's a 2v5. You have to be very careful with this engage. With the minions coming in, Finch, this feels like it could be the beginning of the end.
Looks like it could be for them. Cubo Fred taking quite a bit of damage up against Aurora, but Scary D forced to retreat. And right side Phoenix about to be under siege. He just respawned. Aurora jumps in at low HP and falls to Vote. So one more pick goes their way, but Cyclone Spin is back. But he will not have a front line when he spawns. Benji removed by Nika, but Paul takes care of Cubo Fred with another through space and time. The right side Phoenix removed, and it looks like Cyclone Spin would love a chance to get in here and fight. But the Warriors are not going to give him that opportunity. They get all 3 Phoenixes again, and they start to back up. I wonder if yet another reset's in order. No, we know what they want. It's EFG, another one 42 minutes into the game.
I mean, being able to run in here, this might just be the final nail in the coffin. If the Titans are able to pick up an EFG at this point, it gets them not only back into this game, but maybe into a win state. The Warriors, though, look, 3 Phoenixes are down. We don't get to see comebacks from 3 Phoenixes often. I think the Titans are doing a great job defending right now. But trying to hold on through an EFG with all 3 Phoenixes down. Look, their first target, it's a small checklist, right? Start zoomed in. Defend the Phoenixes, let them respawn. Left is coming up first, then mid. Make sure that happens, then you can start saying, cool, win the fight defending them on the next round, right? Difficult to do. EFG is on the side of the Warriors, but feasible and something that you can manage. Keep it in manageable tasks right now for the Titans, and you're going to be able to slowly progress forward. If they get that successful defense, depending on how many people they could kill on a successful defense, then you can run it down mid, knock down a Phoenix, go for the Titan kill. If you only get 1 or 2, maybe you go for a Primal Fury. Maybe you start setting up and gearing up for more of a defense around maybe a second EFG a little bit later. Of course, that's looking 5 minutes into the future. I think for right now, again, manageable chunks. Focus on your base. Keep it alive as long as you possibly can. Phoenixes are going to be coming back. Granted, weakened and with backdoor protections removed from that EFG, very difficult to defend at this point. So I think the Titans have a lot of work cut out for them just to get to the defense state of their plan.
So left and mid, Phoenix now back up. A 3-2 split currently displayed for the Warriors as Neomon moves up. Aurora dives too, but a stun on the Neo lands. Sunder as well. A wall buys time, and through space and time does clip Vote. Good defense from the Titans has already pushed the Warriors back, but in comes Nika and Cubo Fred, and they like their odds re-engaging. They got to be careful. They're a little bit ahead of the rest of the team. I'm a monster, but Scary D gets up into the air first and does not get hit by it, but Aurora seems to have been left behind. He got his team out, did his job, but pays the price with his life. So they'll send Nika over to push mid alone. The other 4 will take the left side Phoenix. It's done just that quickly. Now the Titans have to defend 4v5.
And those 2 Phoenixes go down pretty quickly. They've got fire minions there on right, a minion wave with them here in mid. Maybe not enough to walk right into the Titan room and feel confident about it, but they are going to be able to get a lot of poke damage out as well, and it's going to be a cause for distress here for the Titans. They are in trouble. That fountain can only heal up so much. Cyclone and Paul, though, there's a lot of damage on the table for them. Maybe enough to find a defense, at least a kill.
But the pressure is on them, as you said, to be the ones that follow through. So 30 seconds before Aurora can rejoin his teammates is Benji just barely able to retreat. Good wall keeps Neomon from taking too much damage, and they're having trouble moving in. I'm a monster though, connects, Cyclone spin low, does make it back to the fountain. Maybe that's enough of a window for the Warriors to step in. Cubo Fred looks for Scary, can't get it because Cyclone spin moves in, but the Titan is low. Shard device is on it, and the Warriors get it done at the last minute. They never have the kill lead, but they do get the win.
I mean, there's so much of that game that comes down to, admittedly, the pivotal Fire Giant, right? That very first one the Warriors just kind of decide to take. They decide it is theirs, and they barely get it, but they get it nonetheless. They don't get a lot off that first Fire Giant play, and that's kind of weird. Why would I highlight it? It is strictly because the Titans do not get that Fire Giant that it makes a big difference for them. They don't have to necessarily defend over there anymore, even if they're losing some of their towers afterward. I think they came out at a bigger deficit than they would into, but stopping the Titans, slowing them down there, set them up for the next one, and really slowly but surely snowballed them to victory.
That's got to be a tough one for the Titans, but a big win for the Warriors. If you want to support your Warriors, though, after a big win, then hit up Insight Apparel, who hooked us up. That's shop.smiteproleague.com. Represent the Warriors to celebrate the win, or the Titans, who need your support more now than ever when they were up in this game and eventually lost it. Either way, get out there and let your teams know you've got their backs. And we will be back. It'll be a short break. Then you'll see us again.
Welcome back to the SPL, everybody. That game was close. 42 minutes of close. Well, maybe 10 minutes of close, 32 minutes of not so close. And you know why it was so close is because all of our pros are playing on Alienware gear. Our title sponsor this year in the SPL, of course, is Alienware, so we want to give them shout-outs once again for providing all of our players and support staff all of the gear they need to compete at the highest level. Code SMITE-AW at smitegame.com/Alienware. You can grab some gear, and I personally guarantee you will be as good as these guys playing, and you will be in contested SPL games soon enough. So go to go to that link and use code SMITE-AW. Grab yourself some Alienware hardware. Agro's with me to confirm that fact, right?
No.
No? That's not true.
No, it's not.
We're doing this again. Got it. Okay.
Doing what?
Okay. If this is the new bit where we just do yeses and nos for interviews.
I don't do bits. That's not. I'm just saying no. I don't do. And in fact, I resent the accusation that I would ever participate in a bit.
A bit.
What?
Right. A small joke is what a bit is. Right. I would never try to drag you down to that level, Aggro. That's on me. I apologize. But if we want to recap
accepted.
game one, talking about dragging down to a certain level, look, this is a game the Titans probably feel like they should have won when the Titan fell, of course, but probably through the first 30 minutes of that game, right? I mean, this was a 6, 7, even higher 1,000 gold lead. And the Oni Warriors were able to stick around, a thorn in their side through and through.
Look, I mean, it was the right idea. You just go with camping the right-hand side, getting Benji ahead. We're going to play around him. It's going to be good. And then we'll just win the game. But the Oni Warriors were just a little bit too defensive, a little bit too good on the defense. And ultimately, the Tartarus Titans just could not break the base. How many times did Cyclone Spin get left alone? Look at how spread out he and Paul are. That's just it's difficult to play with a Giannis as your mid laner at times because you don't get that normal peel via damage or by CC that you can expect the vast majority of the time. Cyclone just got left alone one too many times. And look, I mean, Nika is singularly focused on killing Cyclone Spin. That is the whole game plan. And when you've got something like a Tsukiyomi, you can't really peel that. Nemesis Ultimate, you can't really peel that. It just was not enough defense for Cyclone in this game. He still went 4-2-3. He still did a ton of damage. He still made a ton of plays. But when the entire team is trying with every fiber of their comp to gun you down, it's going to be hard to stop them.
34,000 damage for Nika. A lot of that onto Cyclone Spin. And the way that build went, right, he had Heartseeker, Void Shield, Spectral Armor, all that sort of fun stuff. I think he had a Winged Blade in his build, so it was kind of hybrid-y, tanky, but the Heartseeker, I guess, does enough damage there to give Nika enough leverage to find Cyclone Spin. And it was so important because through that mid-game, even into the early late game, if Cyclone Spin was just left unchecked, the Heimdall was absolutely swinging. So the target selection was important and proper there from Nika. Man on your screen there, Neil. Tough game on the Ymir, but still found some pivotal freezes and some good walls when it mattered most. So this Oni Warriors team, a bit of a bounce back here, but if we know these guys and the way that they compete, probably won't be happy in the fashion that it happened. You're happy to get a win, but still some stuff to clean up here. Aggro, how much do you think picks and bans, though, need to change between these two teams heading into Game 2?
The Scylla pick certainly stands out to me as one that either needs to be taken away or either by ban or by selecting it for Paul. I think that's the thing I would look to do, but if the Oni Warriors are willing to top 2 it, then I don't think that you can really do a whole lot about that. I don't think banning is really the right call. I want to see the Tartarus Titans go with the very similar. I'd still pick Heim first. I think I'm okay with that. I'm still down to pick a Cullen for Benji. Give me Robin in that third slot instead of that Giannis. It's not like Paul had a horrible game by any means. He hit tons of very, very impactful snipes. Well, let's be real. Paul can be really, really impactful on a lot of different picks. It's not exclusive to just the Giannis. I think I would like to see the Titans just make sure if the Warriors are going to give you the option to let Scary play Robin, take it.
Yep, I think you need to. That's what provided Scary D so much of the emphasis and the pressure and the early game aggressiveness over the last few games here for the Tartarus Titans. Remember, it was an on-her banned out in the first wave last time. Changed some things up as far as Hunter priority goes. Tsukiyomi maybe suddenly becomes something that you might need to consider here if you're the Tartarus Titans. I mean, Nika kind of tore through your backline, so if you're concerned about Cyclone Spin, his ability to stay up, stay alive in the backline of these fights, something that will automatically get you back there, could be worth taking away. But Athena, Tiamat, those two stay the same here alongside the Sobek, and then it is the Tsukiyomi ban, so no more Tsukiyomi here for Nika.
Yeah, no surprise. But this leaves open on her, which is what the Titans banned in Game 1. So we'll see if they want to try and take a shot at that. It's going to be a Morrigan ban right away from the Oni Warriors, knowing that they now get a priority hunter in either Heimdall or on her. And they get their option of the pressure solo laners if they want them. They could take a Cullen, they could take the Wukong. But on the other side, the Titans also have it. Scylla is going to be locked in for sure, and no surprise to see that be the top pick. They went Scylla Ymir in this slot before, and I'd be kind of surprised if they changed it, even though Neil definitely didn't have the prettiest score line. Certainly was impactful with those walls.
See what the Oni Warriors are feeling here with their second pick. You mentioned it was the Ymir. Could go somewhere else. Kivo Fred played the Nemesis there in game number 1. Was a decent-looking pick. Stripped away some great protections there towards the later end of the game. And it's Scylla Nemesis, first 2 here for the Oni Warriors. So let's give something over to Dardes that he can try to reprise a good game on, and maybe the same here for Kivo.
A little surprised to see the Nemesis be this highly prioritized. I mean, Fred didn't have a horrible game, but he was below Aurora in the player damage charts well past 30 minutes. So certainly didn't exactly run the game either. But if the game plan is we're getting on top of Cyclone, let Nika pick a god like Wukong that could probably access him fairly easily, and you just drop a Nemesis ult on him and let Nika do the rest of the work for you, that pick looks a little bit better. I like this. Get the Robin, of course, there for Scary. 100% win rate through the 4 games he's played. Not necessarily all on Scary D, but the Robin in general has looked pretty good. It also has a good matchup up against the Scylla because it's very easy to not get hit by that Sikkim. They go back to the Giannis. This means that Benji might have to go a little bit deeper into the pool. And if you're the Warriors here, this gives you the opportunity to pick Kukulkan or Wukong, ban Kukulkan Camazotz, and force Benji to go to something different than what he's really prioritized as of late.
Yep. 2 of those 4 Robin games have been for Scary D. 2 12-12 on the first, 6-1-7 on the second. So that's where expectations are set. Though there's the one Robin game for Scary D where he was like 9-0 at the start against the Soar Scarabs, and then things just kind of spiraled out of control. The Titans did end up winning that game, but wasn't a 9-0 type finish from that game. Ended up going 2-12, so still good. But took a little bit of extra push from the Titans to get over the finish line there in that game, despite a great start on the Robin. But the pace is really what I hone in on there, and that's something that Scary D has gotten good at, and the Robin definitely provides. Giannis locked in once more. Sun Wukong over on the other side. Sun Wukong has been in that conversation, Aggro, is a top pick over there in the solo lane. Has some sustain, the ability to dive into the back line. Not quite as unpeelable as something like the Tsukiyomi, but still can find backliners pretty well.
Yeah, pretty close. I mean, it's still hard to get this guy off of your ADC or your mid laner. He's going to be the ADC again because you're not going to waste your time trying to kill the Giannis the vast majority of the time. You're just going to headhunt the Hunter every single team fight. The Warriors, last time they waited for Nika to see the whole draft before they picked up his god. Don't think that, I mean, they already have the Wukong this time around. They picked Chernobog in this slot last time. Not going to be the case this time around. They go Chernobog Heim. Yeah, I think that now you're forcing vote onto a lower priority hunter. It's probably going to be Jingwei in this spot. And you can pick it now because you know your lane matchup. Yep. You're basically picking Jingwei no matter what the Titans pick. And this gives Neil a counter pick option at the very end of the draft.
So you wonder where Neil goes here. The Ymir is still around. Was okay in some of the setup that it provided. There were some, again, pivotal walls that Neil was able to provide throughout that game. So it could be something that the Oni Warriors choose to look towards here for game number 2. Titans with something interesting to consider here. They're going to have to put Benji onto something different here. It was Kukulkan in game 1. That gets banned out here. Kabrakan as well off the table. And Aurora also needed a pick here, Aggro. So it's Ymir over to Aurora, and that's maybe what the Oni Warriors were considering for Neil, but now it's going to have to be something else for the Warrior support.
I like it. You need a little bit more CC. This gives you actual peel options up against the Wukong, that wall, as long as he doesn't have his ultimate up. And even still, I mean, if you wall him off and then he starts channeling the ultimate, it's going to take him some time. Think that is more likely to be Hercules solo. Benji, a player that certainly has played that way long ago when Hercules was more popular as a solo laner. Could be for Aurora. It could be Ymir solo as well. We've seen that during his time in the SPL quite a bit. So wouldn't be surprised really either way. Think I would prefer the Ymir in support than in solo, but don't feel strongly about it one way or the other. This gives him some flexibility. And it's Fenrir is the option here for Neil Ma. So you just going with that aggressive in-your-face style. I don't love the Fenrir pick here, though, in general. Neil's very good on this god, don't get me wrong. But you want Fenrir against gods that just don't have a way to stop Brutalize, that don't have a lot of CC immunity in their kits. All 5 members of the Titans have CC immunity. All 5 members have a way to get him off, except for Scary D. That's really the only one, unless he wants to use his ultimate.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm a little worried about this Fenrir pick. Neil can't afford to have a slow start to this game like he did in Game 1.
Hercules solo, certainly interesting here if that's what it's going to end up being for Benji. Unless you want to go Ymir and then you just do, let's theory craft a little bit here. You just build all of the rings and that works, right?
Okay.
On Ymir?
Yeah, if you want to lose or don't want to live in your game.
I want to win.
Then yeah, build like full tank and like a void stone or a stone of binding, something like that. You're building tanky. Yeah, those are good items. Unlike the rings on Ymir, you don't want to do.
Got it. Okay, I'll take those off. No Thanos Ymir build. Hercules though in the solo lane. Is that kind of a conditional high execution type pick here, aggro? Though you're gonna have confidence if it is Benji on this pick that he can reach that level. But does it add a little bit of variability into this game where you're kind of saying it's good if X, Y, and Z are able to happen?
Of course, yeah. Hercules definitely a high execution god, always has been, but you just bring so much more damage whenever you put him in solo in comparison to support. Just being at an even or ahead level on Hercules, his base damage numbers are insane. So you get a ton of damage from his base kit. You don't need to worry about that as much when he's in support, though he does just outright solo people in the early game in support. You get that same sort of pressure on backliners throughout the entire game when he's in the solo lane. So either way, I'm excited to see what this front line is going to be able to do. Ymir Hercules is a deadly, deadly front line that you have to go up against. But if both those characters fall behind, those are 2 frontliners that you can largely ignore the vast majority of the time. You kind of just run past them as their CC takes a little bit to go off as a little bit more single target.
Well, the Oni Warriors take one off the Tartarus Titans in game number 1. Will the Titans bounce back in game 2? Let's find out.
Thank you, Dolson and Aggro. Still Finch, Gore, and Doug here as we go on to this critical game number 2 between the 2 proverbial super teams coming into Season 8. The Warriors maybe feeling like they got to steal one there from the Titans in Game 1. The Titans certainly feeling like that one should have been in the bag and one they could have won. Maybe they can bounce back here and still find a win. It's Ymir and Hercules, though, as the front line here for the Titans with Scary D on Robin. That has been a pick that's worked for him, and this is aggressive. Gore, do you like it from the Titans?
I like their draft, but you know what, Finch? Let's go ahead, put this game on 2x speed. Let's get to the 30-minute mark and start talking about comeback potential for the Warriors, right? Like, it almost feels like that's what we have to do after game number 1. It was kind of slow-paced. Just admittedly, that was not a very, let's say, action-packed game, right? Not a lot of room for error on either side there.
There was a lull in the middle there, yeah.
This time around, the Titans... This draft to me screams someone and a team that wants to get it going pretty quickly. Like Aurora's going to be able to get aggressive over here on this Ymir pretty early on compared to what Fafnir's able to bring. Robin, we were kind of talking about and praising earlier on. Neil definitely not in a good spot.
Oh no! Oh no! It's first blood for Cyclone Spin as Neil missed the leap, and that's kind of all she wrote. Really, Gore. I mean, I'd love you to break it down, but I mean, I think he missed the leap.
Yeah, he jumped wrong and then died. There you
Yeah,
go.
did not have
That's
beads.
pretty much, it was a 1 and 2 correlation. He missed, then he died for it. And, I mean, honestly, I like Cyclone Spin getting aggressive here, but it feels like if Aurora's going to have his freeze up at any given time, Vote missteps once, Neil missteps again a second time. That's going to be some free kills over there. Pretty much sets the duo lane up for some success. Feels pretty good over there, and Aggro had kind of highlighted all of the weak links that have really, well, made this Fenrir a questionable pick of all things. I was actually wondering if it was so questionable as a support that they were going to maybe move it somewhere else. But right
See if we got the
between
data
the
points
two
right
of them,
here.
like that is pretty much the worst case scenario for you, right? You go in for that jump, you miss the stun not only on Ymir or on her, right? But you miss it on both. Like that is literally your worst case scenario if you're trying to get aggressive. And the retaliation there kind of makes you wonder why Sunder not beats, maybe aggression, but definitely an early slip up from the Warriors. We'll have to see if they can hold on elsewhere.
I like that Neil's still looking for aggression, but a two-man freeze, brutalized narrowly, getting Neilma out of trouble yet again. Because Aurora's been on point with these freezes. Neilma was on this Ymir in Game 1 and looked good with those late-game walls, which I think might be some of Ymir's best value. But Aurora doesn't care about the late game. He's getting aggressive right here and now. Freeze into the 2, and it looks like he did enough to steal away the purple buff on his own. This has been a rough start for Vote and Neil here in the long lane.
And honestly, I feel like that's the best blanket statement to just leave the duo lane on. Like, it was bad. We'll see if they can come back, right? I want to shove them over to the side because I really am intrigued by this Hercules pick. Now, I don't know if there's even a way to track this stat because it's so ridiculously niche, but I don't remember the last time I saw Hercules solo in the SPL. He was always picked for Aurora, he was picked for PBM, and some games and, cases like this, he would have been picked for maybe, Aurora, Neil Ma. Like, supports is the point, right? He was supposed to be in the duo lane. So it's interesting to have him back over there in the short lane, being able to deal with it, especially against the Wukong. I mean, it feels like a matchup that's natural for both of them. Maybe a little more aggression that can come out from the Hercules. Wukong maybe a little safer overall, so probably not a lot of blood, but it translates to the same late game as it would if there were a Hercules in the long lane, which is that maybe you're missing out on some of those early rotations. You're not going to be in mid at level 5 to knock someone up, push them back into the tower, and then throw a boulder at them. But at level 15, you're going to be able to do exactly that. In fact, it's going to be the exact same setup that we're used to seeing from a Hercules, but compounded with, ideally, what's going to be a lead from a Ymir and a Raven that they get in this 3v3 pillar. And I think that's going to make the Titans a lot stronger in that, I guess it was like 20 to 30 minute mark where they really had that lull last game. They were ahead, but couldn't really do anything with that lead, especially after the Warriors stripped away that first Fire Giant. I think this is the kind of draft that lets them play a lot more fighty. They just want to get in there, box them down, beat the Warriors into submission, and win this game as quickly as possible.
That's what it seems like. The Titans really looking for another purple buff invade with a rotation from Scary D. And it goes down easily, really no contest. I like that the Warriors, though, invade blue on the other side as their way to respond. They can't match that pressure in duo, and you know what? They're not even going to try as the boulder comes out and does end up getting Neil low. Instead, they will come over to the right side of the map and steal farm there, see if they can get Benji behind in response to the fact that Vote and Neil are behind. And they'll even get this Greater Scorpion on right, a couple enhanced buffs will be their reward, and that Pyromancer will be up at that 10-minute mark now.
It's going to make things easy for them over on the right-hand side of the map. That's where we've seen a lot of the pressure be successful for the Titans, although so far this game, it has been left side. And Gorp going to go down towards Titans, so they get the enhanced. Realistically, the enhanced purple buff, that's the one that I highlight. I think it's blue buff on right, purple on left that are like the most prevalent. The 20% CDR that is now going to be picked up, presumably actually for Neil, since he's the one who picked up the enhanced buff, I believe. And then that 20%, or is it 20%? Whatever, the enhanced number, percent attack speed for Cyclone Spin. That is going to hurt. A good wall, good freeze from Neil, plus a couple more easy in-hand autos from Cyclone. It's going to be a very devastating 1-2 punch for the Warriors. Neil's the one who's been traversing the map. I kind of want to see this Fenrir get more proactive, but much like Aggro said, I'm having a lot of trouble seeing where he's going to be able to get into a fight where he feels good about it.
Yeah, Wasn't there, but against that Robin of Scary, who will happily take any fight. Imp Pillar being used by Vote defensively after placed by Cyclone Spin. Good work from him there in that small micro play. Yeah, this is going to be a tough early game here for Neo, with everyone picking up beads except for Scary, who has the overhead kick and that Mystic Rush to get him up and over a wall, get some room. Nika pulled in by Benji, but still no kill potential there with Somersault Cloud still in his back pocket. But they are showing up on this right-hand side to defend this blue. Remember, this was the response to the purple buff invade that Cyclone Spin is continuing, was the blue buff invade by the Warriors in right. But this time, Scary D gets there first. They defend the blue nicely. But maybe time for a collapse into Aurora. In comes Neoma with the leap, but a portal gets him out of there. Cubo Fred takes damage, runs Stable Vortex and through space and time. And the cavalry has arrived. Crush used on Aurora, but that did not deter him. They can't find any more pushes, but they do manage to get away with that aggression. Now Scary D looking for Cubo, who has the dash, repositions. That means maybe they can get this ultimate round from Nika, but no, Scary D has to retreat. And now Benji in an awful position. Beads come out from him, and he is left to the wolves.
Well, the boulder's going to come through to try and give him a little bit of that immunity, some damage to turn it around. He's still alive, Benji, running away. And this is something the Titans did last game, maybe not to the same extent. I mean, that was really clean from them. But I think there's a couple of moral lessons in there. One is that Benji's not going to be easy to kill, and maybe the Warriors need to recognize that now. And the other one was a little bit earlier, which I think this is just a good theme all around. If you're chasing a Ymir, and he seems confident, you see him turn around just once to see what's going on behind him, you probably don't want that fight, because I feel like there was a small window there where if Aurora turns around and hits a freeze, 3 people on the Warriors are set up to potentially get taken down there. I think it was still on cooldown from a missed freeze slightly prior to that.
Scary D makes sure the portal,
no!
Paul
no!
With no portal, he just walks past Dardes, but Dardes will get that kill. Scary D leaving his mid laner out to die a bit. Paul even having to use beads in that trade, so now suddenly Neoma has a great target to go for, which is Paul, who he can follow him over the wall if he portals, in most cases with that jump, if he's not going through a really long one.
That had the most, you mind if I take this? Energy behind it, like Scary D. I don't even know if he intended to take that portal away from Paul, but I'm going to call it as it is. He kind of kills his mid laner there by doing so. This is going to be an interesting dynamic to see whether or not that they can continue that, maybe get the portals on point, figure out how they want to go forward with that. With no Mystic Rush available, didn't necessarily have a whole lot of options for the disengage, though. So somebody was going to die there. It was just a question of who they wanted to go down. And it comes down to this wash where there's not a lot really going on between the two teams. It's this focus on the individual farm, right? Every ounce of aggression that's coming down from the Titans is met with aggression from the Warriors, and anything that gets too aggressive on the side of the Warriors has a good retreat or good peel from the Titans. Neil hasn't been caught out as much as we saw earlier on. There's a through space and time, seemingly just for the numbers on it, than it is anything else. It just kind of feels like it's going to be waiting until some team can really run a lead onto this Fury before something else steps out. Or maybe a good gank onto a Hercules. The blue buff is up, but Neil's over here. They might be trying to get rid of Benji.
Looks like that's the call, bringing him towards Nika, and Benji taking too much damage right away. Driving strike buys some time, but no chance he escapes in that situation. A nice kill there for the Warriors. So Cyclone Spin wants to get aggressive, but just nothing there, and that turns into the Pyromancer call here for the Warriors. Yet again, they're finding their own places on the map to respond to the pressure the Tartarus Titans have. It's been all long lane pressure for the Order team. It's been purple buff invades. I think they missed the last one. And a nice lead for Cyclone, but over in right, finally some nice answers from the Warriors.
The one issue I have, I wish it had been a quicker response from the Titans. Once the kill happens onto Benji, you know so many people are over there. I saw Scary D at his back camps, Paul in mid lane. They're starting to group up towards this left-hand side of the map and wander their way over here, but realistically, they could have rushed for a Fury immediately and at least counteracted what was the Pyromancer. I mean, the gold lead is almost negligible at this point, what, about 100 gold fluctuating, if even, between these two teams. And so it's not the end-all be-all for it, but look at the steady decline. I mean, a great start from the Titans has just been slowly stripped away. Last time it took them 30 minutes for the Warriors to really find that capability. This time they've done it in 10.
Roar was able to find some nice poke over there in left, but that is about all as he moves, or the whole squad moves back towards mid. Maybe now the time to start this Fury you would have liked in response to the right side pressure, and they do have it down to half. Cyclone Spin trades it off to Scary, but Aurora still not tanking. He was more zoning, and the Warriors have pushed them off the objective successfully. Vote can't do a whole lot more chasing, neither can Neil, but maybe this isn't a bad window for the Warriors to try and take this objective. At the very least, they'll get the Oracle Vision. Neilma steps forward again, looking to see if anyone steps out of order, and he can take a nice quick set of beads, but it looks like that will not be the case. Good defense by the Warriors gets the Titans off the objective.
The slow pressure. I actually am really interested in watching Neil. Like, I think I keep coming back to that. Like, my mind keeps resetting onto Fenrir. Only because he's been part of both kills.
Yeah,
and
he's
yet I
important in this
still am wondering how impactful he's going to be as time scales on, right? He's falling a little bit further behind now. Beads are online for 4 members on the side of the Titans. That's been true for a little while now, but will he be able to continue being a big part of the team and a big kind of impact player for them?
Was this a gank?
Or is he going to fall off? He's got the Thieves going in for
Cyclone
Cyclone.
Spin jumps forward, drops the Desert Fury, gets the Aegis out from Vode, yes, but Cyclone Spin now in a tough spot. Good Aegis, gets him away from Airstrike and the brutalized damage, and now he stands tall. Better Relic usage, keeps Cyclone Spin in it. Unstable Vortex cannot connect. Aurora wants to lock Neil off once his ADC to get his money's worth out of this, but it was too greedy. Aurora comes over and turns a great survival from Cyclone Spin into a 1-for-0 trade in favor of the Warriors.
Yeah, I think unfortunate for him. I do think, like, again, Tunnel Vision comes in, and you do want those kills. It would be nice, especially all that work Cyclone put in, but that's a huge win for Cyclone. Admittedly, he ends up burning both of his relics and surviving a gank. That's the way to really look at it, right? Not necessarily, oh, well, he didn't get anything out of it. He did get the Aegis on the side of Vote. But to think, like, to jump in that moment, Finch, like, how brave you are, and to use his ult as well as his beads and his Aegis to survive that way, that was a really great play. And unfortunately for them, it has really surfaced into nothing for the Titans. It is a
play from Aurora.
Fury picked up for the Warriors. It's a kill picked up for the Warriors. I mean, everything they could have wanted on this side of the map, except for the kill on the Cyclone, happened.
Yeah, not bad for the Warriors. Really able to turn, you know, maybe some good setup in terms of getting those relics out of Cyclone Spin. You're right that is still something nice for the Warriors. That would have been all they gotten had they not found the support pick and then turned that into a Fury when no one from the Titans could afford to stick around. So a small lead now back towards the Warriors. Not too bad, but nothing crazy 14 minutes into this game. Still very close in these individual matchups with a bit of a slight lead for Neil over Aurora and a slight lead for Cyclone Spin over Vote. Looks like Cuvo not doing too bad in his matchup up against Scary as well. But with the Fury and the Pyromancer now down and not even really any major buffs coming up anytime soon, we might see a bit of a break here from these teams as they take a little bit of time back towards their waves instead of looking for this action. But that's not stopping Nico from looking to proxy and setting himself up for a rotation. Pyro's not too far from spawning, so maybe that's what this all is in preparation for, as Benji, Scary, and Aurora show up. And I think the bird form may have been used. We certainly heard that sound effect, and it looks to be the case as Nika forced into the ultimate. A nice exchange here for the Tartans to get Nika that much more vulnerable.
But look at Neil and Cuvo. They're here to fight. Oxform comes back up, so he's able to get out of there, but it looks like the Warriors really do want to engage here. Might not be the call, though. Neil takes a lot of damage.
Yeah, Neilma leaps in, finds no stun, no relics, and uses the ultimate to leave. So still seems good. Blink from Benji couldn't find the driving strike, so Mystic Russian through space and time down for the Titans alongside their Blink from Benji, but they get the Blink and the ult out from Nika. Neilma's ultimate's down as well. So kind of a good amount used on both sides, but seemed initially like the Titans were setting themselves up for a good fight as Cubo Fred drops the ultimate on Aurora, and Neilma keeps up with the Brutalize, and now Aurora has nowhere to go. Would have been too slow anyway, and a huge kill for the Warriors.
And now Cuvo feels like he's in an awkward position. Neil gets another stun, though, and that's going to be the power of this Fenrir. If your beads are down, he's going to find you.
Cubo Fred turns that into a double kill. Even when it looks like the Tartarus Titans are doing good setup for themselves, it turns into good for the Warriors as Benji just walks on in, doesn't hard commit though, comes back out. So just for now, the Warriors are just getting kills, haven't turned this into much else as Vote invades the purple solo, noticing that Cyclone Spin's way over in right, helping his team get the Tier 1 tower in solo, but that is canceled out by this Tier 1 tower in duo going down in favor of Vote. So across the map, lots happening here, Gore.
You know, it was a little bit of a flub finish, but you said Tartans at one point, and now all I can think is that we need a Tartarus Titan kilt on our store. You know, Insight, I don't know if you make kilts, man, but if you ever do, there's your idea for
we'll
it.
Take it.
The Titans are going to be able to pick this up. See, here's the thing. Cyclone Spin, again, with these beats, Neil is finding himself in a precarious spot. It's just the question of what he can pull out for it, right? Look at how much they use to lock him down, and I think that opens up an opportunity for the Warriors outside of just the fact that now maybe they're missing technically a stun, technically they're engaged in terms of the Fenrir ult. He burns the beads of Cyclone Spin, gets rid of the ult as well from Cyclone and Paul, so kind of a little win there for Neil, even if it costs him his life. And he's had a bigger role in this. I mean, beads still picked up for Scary D, even with all the CC immunity we've highlighted in his ult as well as in his overhead kick. But he's gone for those beads, and I think his last death didn't use those either. Wondering if the Oni Warriors are really able to continue capitalizing on this. I mean, if the Titans start getting their reactions like on point, ready for the fight, I think it's going to be increasingly difficult from 17 minutes on now to really continue finding the picks that they've been looking for, especially once we start seeing full 5-on-5 groupings.
Yeah, every time in this game so far, Gore, I've thought the Warriors had some kind of disadvantage. They've turned it into an advantage, and it's worked for them so far in Game 1, turning what was a terrible early game into a strong late game around Dioma on that Amir. He's on the Fenrir this time, so it's going to be a bit harder for him in the late game to have that same impact. And maybe things won't come to that. He can do it a little bit sooner as the Warriors are in position for this Fury as it's about to spawn. Neither solo laner is here. They're locked in a desperate battle over on the right-hand side that will likely result in very few kills or big cooldowns being used. So a 4-on-4 here in left is the Fury just about to spawn. But the Warriors will come back towards mid, as have the Titans to push a wave in. Paul there to contain it. So Neil Ma leaps up and over Scary. Can't find much more, though.
Pressure this Oni Fury could give is actually immeasurable at this point. I mean, look, 5 towers still standing on both sides. Yeah, so 10 towers still on the map with 1 tier 1 in left down for the Titans, 1 tier 1 in right down for the Warriors. So a whole lot of gold still ripe for the pickin' out there. And a little bit of pressure from the Oni minions is either going to be able to open up a fight around an FG for you, or at least knock down some of these tier 1s for you, right? At least assist in that regard. Which isn't going to be as much gold as you could possibly get, but still, any gold's better than no gold at this point. And it looks like the grouping, at least right now, coming from the Warriors on the map, is a little better at responding to a Fury. But it doesn't look like anybody really has that at the top of their list of priorities just yet. Maybe looking for another pick before either team rotates over there, but it feels better. I mean, I look at this, again, Scylla here for Dardes, I think gives a little more completion for objectives on the side of the Warriors, so I wouldn't mind seeing them be the ones to try and start it up. Their zone is a little worse, though, and that might be what their concern is that, yes, you technically can try to secure it, but you're not going to be able to keep the Titans away from that fight.
No, going to be tough to keep them out of this one. It's 20 minutes in, 7 kills on the board. There has been action, but it resulting in a relatively slow pace at the end. About 1,500 gold in the Warriors' favor. That is not really a whole lot at this point in the game. Witchblade there for Aurora, trying to deal with this attack speed as Neomar jumps in, grabs Benji, and then brings Benji to Dardes, who leaves immediately with that driving strike. Benji does, and gets back towards the squad. So that's Neomar's ultimate use. Benji gave up nothing in response. And a bit of a win there for the Titans, really, that Benji kind of shrugged off that engagement from Neil. They should be able to start up this Fury with a pretty nice advantage.
They're happily going to be able to follow your advice there, but this is where things get awkward. I think the re-engage, I mean, Neil's still going to be able to bring a stun. They get the Fury. Can they get out alive?
No, now they're bringing Neil Ma to his death, and he's done. No ultimates and nothing else to help him escape. Even used Frenzy and Sunder, it would seem. Well, that didn't get a whole lot of value. Blink from Cuvo, Fred down, but aside from that, the Titans seem to be in a pretty good shape at this point in the game. Everyone's got their relics up, only Paul's ultimate down. Looks like the call is to head over towards this fire pit after the mid-tier 1 goes down. And the only Warriors have to decide their calculus, how much do they want to commit to trying to defend here. If it is the Fire Giant, they have to come in, but if it's just Pyro, maybe they can afford to stay back, but of course the Titans won't make it that easy. It is the Fire Giant they start up. 21.5 minutes into the Warriors nearby and ready to defend. Aurora steps forward to be the zoning tool, but the Titans drop the objective and come for the fight instead. But the front line looking to retreat. Aurora too low and too far from backup, but Cyclone Spin leaps in and looks for a kill on the Q4. Fred can't quite find it, and they lost their support in Aurora way in the backline. Nika's clone goes to the Shadow Rain, but that's all, as out comes the I'm a Monster. Does not connect. Aegis from Cyclone Spin keeps him in it, and in the end, just ends up being a 1-for-0 in favor of the Warriors. They take care of Aurora.
Cyclone Spin's getting a lot done in these fights, so his player damage, honestly, it's a lot lower than I expected it to be. He's number 4 on the charts, but the way he's been hitting these shots on the Vote and Dardes, thought it was going to be a little bit more. No scary, caught back and under the tower. Neil's got one more. He's going to be able to find that. So, ultimately, if you extend that fight, 2-for-0 in favor of the Warriors. Although maybe it's going to be a 2-for-1 really quick as Neil tries to run away. I just think that Dardes, and specifically Vote here, have been in trouble more often than not from Cyclone. And it looks like the Warriors, I thought this was going to be an easy kill, but Neil almost gets out.
Finally does fall when Paul's able to get off an unstable vortex. Looks like the cooldowns weren't there really for the Warriors from the beginning. Nika took a while to try and get in Paul's face. Some damage just gets put down on the Neil, and eventually it's too long and too late before anything can really be done to keep Neil alive. But now Benji on the wrong side of town. He's been slowed, knocked up, all the CC there, but Cyclone Spin on his way to provide backup for his support. But Cubo Fred blinks in, another slow applied, and the ultimate put on him. But he makes his way out of there easy as you like. Shouldn't have been, but listen, he just exits stage left. Now Cyclone Spin forced to jump away. His beads and ult comes out, so still a win for the Warriors, it would seem, on the tail end there, but not quite, I think, what they would have expected to have gotten.
I mean, at the end of the day, the Warriors are still ahead, and that's all they care about, right? As long as they can maintain this. Beads down for 2 of them. That's maybe going to make things a little more awkward. Actually, for 3 of them there. Now I'm just noticing Dardes' beads still on a 35-second cooldown. Beads missing from Cyclone, from Aurora, but everybody else on the Titans going to be able to play it pretty safely here. I mean, a Pyromancer taken. The Primal Fury not up for another 2.5-ish minutes, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. The Fire Giant still just patiently waiting for someone to step up to him. And honestly, with the burn that the Titans had, even a small window of opportunity should be enough to be able to collect that one and that buff for all 5 of them. It does depend on the Warriors' positioning, and again, vision is where I start to focus at this point. I see a lot of ward coverage coming down from the Warriors, some covering their own jungle, but a couple of deep wards placed right now by Neil. Although he's going to have to play it safe as he does so, because it is going to be, one, noticed by the Titans, but also he's alone, and he has been absolutely destroyed in some of these moments where he's caught off guard. And that's the thing that's interesting. I mean, he's 3 levels up on Aurora, but it definitely feels like Aurora has more staying power on the map. Ultimately, it does mean that if Neil can continue this kind of trajectory, he'll be able to finish off a starter item maybe a little bit sooner at level 17. But Aurora, a Guardian scaling, man, it's definitely paying off in a lot of these engagements. Still takes a lot of his health really quickly, as he's about 7 levels down from a majority of the lobby, but yes, he's going to be able to absolutely turn the fights around, especially with the CC, the walls. Like, Ymir's just really good. I think even at level 13 here, Aurora's not worried, but he can't get caught out alone. He will absolutely lose his life.
You mentioned the burn of the Titans. The Warriors going to be pretty fast themselves with this attack speed jungler paired alongside Vote, even an aggressive support who can contribute a bit himself, and then Dardes' damage to confirm. I don't think either one of these teams really comfortable leaving the objective alone for long. Tartarus Titans step up, D-Ward, and now they're the ones with the actual sentry in place. Still not time for them to start anything up. Meanwhile, Vote is on the left side of the map. He was on a wave too, so the Titans should have that information. I think Vote going to try and take this Fury, but I think that too on a ward of the Titans is hard to see. So they certainly have the information that Vote's not here yet, and I think that's why they're starting up this FG. Benji doing the zone work, takes a good bit of damage. Primal Fury, if they didn't know before, they certainly know now as Vote collects it backs and will use that rapid reincarnation to show up to the fight. Nika frozen, but the Titans have not done enough with this window. The Warriors very deftly hold on. I think Nika had to give up his beads, but that is about all. And now Vote's back, and they're in a pretty good position to contest.
And I gotta say, Finch, you were talking about the burn that the Warriors have. Add Primal Fury into that, and then factor in that frenzy that Neil has. Seems like they're gonna be able to get this with very few kills, just a little bit of room from the Titans, and all of a sudden the Warriors are gonna be able to come in and just spring a trap, it feels like, on the Fire Giant. That was the dangerous, around the same time as well, the dangerous game that the Titans were playing in game number 1. The Warriors kind of snuck out one of those Fire Giants. Granted, the entire scenario behind it was different, right? The Titans technically had more towers. In fact, they managed to get more after that Fire Giant. They got more gold, and it ended up being all for naught. The only thing the Warriors stopped was the speed at which the Titans could do it with, and that kept their base safe. Whereas this time around, they're the ones with the lead. The towers don't quite reflect that mid-tier 1 being pesky there for the Titans in terms of thwarting the Warriors' advantage, but ultimately a tier 1, especially 30 minutes in, but definitely if one of these teams gets a Fire Giant, means literally nothing to a carry at this point. An ADC, any of these hunters are going to be able to rip it to shreds with a few autos. So a lot of pressure and presence on here, and like you had mentioned, a lot of ward coverage coming down cleanly from the Titans. And she's going to take a little bit of damage. Neil's going to be potentially caught out here, as it's just a game of chess as to who gets caught first.
Looks like Neil is the piece that the Titans are looking to take, but he picks up Aurora, pulls them in. Shard device comes out in response, even a wall, but still not much to be done. Neither one of these teams likes their ability to hard engage, it would seem. They're looking for picks kind of to the sides of these fights as an avenue to make it in. It's because these teams are still so close in terms of relative strength at this point, and they're both teams very comfortable waiting till a bit later on in the game. No need to rush it, I wouldn't say, from these squads. I mean, it is a lot of the PK team that was one of our most patient squads on both sides here, right? You got Hugo and Neil on one, Scary and Paul on the other as Neil jumps in. I'm a Monster comes out from Dardes, free hand, and it connects onto Aurora, who's low. Benji comes down to half as well as Nika tries to keep up the pressure. Meanwhile, Scary D a bit isolated in the back of the fight. It's him on Hugo on him. Dardes gets rid of Aurora, but through space and time gets Vote and Dardes low. A big play from Paul, but Cuvo Fred does find a kill in the Cyclone spin over on the other side of the fight as well. 2 for 2, supporting ADC for the entire backline of the Warriors, and that's why the Titans are getting aggressive. They like their chances here, but Nika proves too strong as they take that portal away. Benji cannot escape. He falls, Paul the only one still standing.
You lose both your carries, though, and isn't that just the worst for the Warriors? They do not have enough after that fight to get a Fire Giant. Might have been able to scoop up a Pyromancer. Honestly, they have plenty of time. What is that, 30 seconds? Yeah, it's still anybody is really back for the Titans. So Pyromancer, I think, is still on the list. They might even be able to start up this FG before they get any real response from the Titans, because with Vote coming back, Vote's going to be able to use that passive, jump back into the fight pretty quickly, should be able to get here for the end of the FG. Dardes is going to respawn around the same time, so theoretically that's going to be enough, but Finch, this is risky because Paul's going to be over here, does not have his ult, Roar's going to be over here. They do still have capabilities to steal this.
It looks like through space and time just came out. It was enough to at least get the Warriors off. They dropped the FG for now. And Paul likes his chance to continue to get aggressive, but Neilmoss picked him up, forced the beads out from Paul, who got too aggressive, it would seem, and will have to come back towards Pyro. Looks like the Warriors are okay with this trade, giving up Pyromancer at this point, but someone's got to stick around. With Cyclone Spin here, the Titans can threaten the objective, but it looks like that is not their call. They'll clean up the right side minions. Warriors will have time to reset. We come back into this next FG dance, with the only big change being that Fire Giant even harder to do now that it is enhanced, but worth more when you get it. Crush plus that jump does mean Aurora now down to half HP, and the Fire Giant fully leashed. The Warriors have once more deterred the Titans from taking the objective. This feels a lot like Season 8, where sometimes these teams would struggle a little bit in these late-game, very even FG dances.
They have to be very careful here. It's like we said, I actually think I'm going to give the burn of the FG as well as the secure over the Warriors. If they decide to pop that frenzy at any given time, that's usually going to be the commit. They might save it for a team fight, though. It's definitely safer in a scenario like this. And whenever Boulder's up, especially through space and time is up, those things can come together and really put a fork in your plans for how things are going to go. Right now, Nika doesn't use his beats, but does take a fair bit of damage there from the freeze. It's not going to be enough that I think he's truly worried about it. He's Wukong. He's going to be able to heal up and be just fine, just tanky as is. But that's kind of been the way in the ebb and flow of this game, right? See who can smack down just enough to give themselves, again, a little bit of room. If you get the kill, that's a big bonus. But right now, it's all about presence on the map. And it looks like even with Scary D getting aggressive, they want Nika, but they don't see the collapse coming in.
It does come in. Two-man stun from Neil means Scary D and Benji are forced to retreat. Scary even uses his ultimate defensively, but Cyclone spins on the Fury and gets in favor of his team. Looks like he had Aurora there with him as well. And that's not a bad one to get here at this point in the game. Can help when it comes to these late-game Fire Giant dances. And something needed to kind of break what has become now at this point a stalemate. Keep an eye, though, on these Oni waves as they spawn. Looks like Vote's in position if he can stick around, but he'll be backing that left side one in particular. Going to be a problem here for the Warriors.
You know, they probably aren't thinking much about it right now, but I bet the Titans are still happy subconsciously about that Chernobog ban. It would make Vote so much more difficult to deal with as of right now. That was a good swing to make him kind of fall back onto this Jingwei. Still safe picks. I mean, he's 1-1-1. I also have to give a lot of credit, Finch. I noticed this, but I didn't see it happening, I guess, in front of my eyes. Cubo's 5-0-4. Like, Cubo's having a really good Nemesis game for someone whose name has not been said a whole ton. And I think it's a lot of, especially the assists, his capabilities of setup and stripping away protections and everything like that makes it a lot easier. And speaking of stripping away protections, Neil, even Nika, y'all are pretty deep without any carries.
But the Titans were so close to just having done the Fury. They dropped it for the kills. Do not get those kills, and here the Warriors are ready to re-engage. Or at least considering it. They fall back still. I can't believe that was the calculus from these Titans, though. Brutalize gets Numa up and over the wall. He shall fall back, and back to the EFG go to the Titans, so they do not start it up just yet. That was about as close as anyone has had it to being down, a little bit below half. We'll see if anyone can get it a little bit lower than that soon.
This is a good zone already. Scary D, Benji making sure that there's some space created. Cyclone does a lot of damage. This is going to be difficult to get into, but they still have better secure here for the Warriors.
And Neil kind of pulling
the frenzy.
Benji. There's that frenzy pop that you said was the go button, and Dardez finds I'm a Monster onto Aurora. That will remove him now. Cubo Fred sticking to Cyclone Spin and winning the duel, getting rid of the ADC on the other side. Maybe EFG is for the birds because the Votes and the Oni Warriors like to take the fights instead. Benji juking out the Tiger Stun, but coming back into the fray anyway, all the same. Unstable Vortex does get Nika low. It looks like the Warriors are done chasing. They'll take their 2 for 0. And come back to the objective, but Paul, Benji, and Scary are on their way back out to contest once more.
Yeah, Scary still has full health, not quite full mana, and only has his beads in terms of engage, no ultimate. So there's not really a lot for him to get into the fight, but he's deep in the backline. I mean, this could loop around. He might be able to find Dardez, but it's not going to be before the FG goes down. This might be too dangerous for them.
Paul blows up Cubo Fred. You were just talking about how he hadn't died yet, but finally Paul able to get to him and removes EFG from him as well. Not bad from Paul since they have to give up the EFG. So Benji goes to the portal, takes a bunch of damage from Crush. A miscalculation from the solo laner for the Titans. Just when it looked like they'd been given a gift. Paul. They take one back. Then Nika dies to Paul, who's keeping them in this late game single-handedly right now. Paul has stripped away 2 EFGs from the Oni Warriors who thought they'd made a breakthrough, but instead now must find a way to retreat.
I mean, right now, this Yanis is, like you said, saving them the game. It was definitely teetering on the edge there. Good freeze from Aurora. And with this amount of slowdown, this amount of lockdown, now with Scary D jumping in the back line, he's taking way more damage than he bargained for. I don't know if that's where he wanted to end up. Definitely felt like another fight for the Titans, but now it's kind of falling apart here. Once again, they're on the back foot. In fact, Aurora, I don't know if you're that safe.
No, he's not. Neil Ma gets aggressive, picks up Paul, who does not have beads, brings him back, but a wall from Aurora buys him time alongside Paul's Aegis. So they shall retreat. The Warriors step up, take half their health from another Paul Unstable Vortex. And it looks like finally the Warriors are going to reset after having gotten the Fire Giant. They've gotten on 3 members still, Dardez, Neil, and Vote. That still will be enough likely for them to consider a push and try and start collecting these tier 2s, because as long as they are up, ending the game going to be made tough. Cyclone Spin even dropping a clap, enjoying the current nature of this game. Very close still, 36 minutes in.
Definitely a lot more tantalizing than their first game. I think the Warriors are just playing a little cleaner. I mean, all around it was much better, and Paul, I mean, has just been a thorn in their side to the point where I don't think they quite knew what hit him. Look, Cuvo, that's what, slightly over half, let's say 52% of his health. That is not enough that you should feel confident, apparently. Holy moly, Finch. That is so much damage. And I can't imagine you're happy about that scenario if you're Cuvo. You're still, I think, in the plus, right? Vote, the person who I would say is most important for the structure siege, still has that EFG. Same thing for Neil. So they're going to be able to stay aggressive and continue controlling the pace of the game. But it's moments like this, right? Nika and Neil looking for fights, but what can they really get out of it? Are they going to be able to pull anybody in? That's the big question.
Let's see, Neilma goes to Cyclone Spin, but Cyclone responds with that Desert Fury. Neilma picked up and plucked and pushed back in, and now the damage raining in onto the defending world's MVP. He will fall to Cyclone Spin, and just like that, we find ourselves with the Oni Warriors getting next to nothing off of that EFG after all of this. It's on Dardes and Vote for another minute, but doesn't look like there's really any plans for them to go collect some gore. We might not be long or far from another FG push. That's if the Titans don't want to take their 5v4 power play directly to the bank that is the remaining structures here for the Oni Warriors. Benji gets aggressive, the whole squad with him. I think they indeed do want to collect, and they'll start with this mid-tier 2.
Yeah, hey, this is kind of starting a weird trend for the Warriors. This is the second Fire Giant they've had where they're actually going to be coming out with less gold than they went into it with. They're losing a little bit more. They still have a gold lead as of right now, and their experience, well, doesn't really matter overall in their case. But as things have been going, that Phoenix still survives. Just barely, but still survives. So ultimately, I don't think they're as stressed as they could be. In fact, they technically get a tier 2 for tier 2. So ultimately, I guess an even trade at the end of the day. This feels better for the Titans, Finch. I mean, everything about their positioning, the damage numbers, like their capabilities to fight back. Unfortunately, as it is right now, Neil is in a very awkward spot where he has to be engaging people. He has to be the one kind of starting the engagement, but it feels like him and Nika have been more or less alone for some of these engagements while the rest of the team figures out what they want to do. And I kind of want to start seeing that coalesce into a true like team fight with 5 of them together.
Warriors just going to group up and take that tier 2 in mid. I think recognizing the Titans needed a reset, they capitalized on that window to open up both the mid and solo lanes as paths to a Phoenix if they win a fight relatively quickly. But 3 members of the Warriors taking a reset here. It looks like they've got time. Fire Giant still not here yet, and they'll be able to make their way in. They'll come back in with wards topped off, relics upgraded if it was feasible for them and hadn't been done yet. And then they'll look for their place around this Fire Giant dance. Looks like Scary D can do the same. He'll return to base as well. And still no one claiming this neutral position around the FG at this point, Gore. A couple of sentries down, though, from the Titans. Those are pretty good for them for guaranteed spots where they know the opponents don't have vision. But the Fire Giant now crashing back in. It was a long battle before the first one of this game went down. The EFG to the Warriors, who were able to eventually claim 2 tier 2s as a result. We'll see if this one goes down any faster and if the bounty for doing it is any higher.
I'm really excited for this. It's been a while since we really gotten to see a game. I think the longest up to this point has been 48 minutes. And so a game where things really start to dive deep into the point where boots are being sold and you're in this 6th item discussion. And it really is going to be creating, I think, the biggest divide. Dominance was just picked up there for Vote. And I think that one's going to be interesting. That was like one of the biggest items, like the most talked about, I think, again, at the beginning of Season 8. A lot of people were playing it. It's going to give them some pins, some power. But having that additional pin on basic attacks is helping Vote out a lot of these scenarios. I expect to see that play a big role against someone like Aurora.
Benji's on Vote. Aurora was just pulled in by Neil Ma on the wall. While it does isolate Neil, seems not to result in much. Neil leaps in, pops the frenzy, and does manage to hit a couple, but Paul brings Dardes solo right away, and Scary capitalizes through space and time. Unstable Vortex has removed Dardes while he still had his I'm a Monster up, but Scary D is low, and Nika gets there with the Tiger stun. That means jungle for mid is the current way this battle has gone. But the Warriors have to be careful. As long as Paul is still up, then there is still an assassin cloaked on the member of the Tartarus. Titans freeze, lands on the Cubo Fred, but they turn around. Benji the target, Neomon gets pushed in, and Paul responsible for another death in this game. Yet another bounty claimed, as Cyclone Spin gets a big crit on the vote. The Titans now in a great position. But we'll see what they can accomplish on the back of it as Nika uses the beads to avoid the freeze.
And as of right now, he's going to be the one standing guard between the Titans and what feels like their success. The longer it takes to kill off Nika, the better it is for the Warriors. But unfortunately for them, it's not going to be the end-all be-all. Cuvo backs to base. So at the end of the day, it's a wash, not using this opportunity. Well, I guess, look, they've got 40 seconds. What am I in a rush for, right? Like, there's no need to worry. You also have through space and time. It's going to get you right back into the FG. And Cuvo, look, there's a lot of people I will say I'd love to see go for a Hail Mary, try for a steal here. I don't think Nemesis is on that list for me. I'm not sure what Cuvo can do here that would allow him to get in there, go for a steal, and get out alive. The only player I could give that to is if Dardes happened to be right about where Totem of Ku spawned and prepared to ult over the wall. But in this case, an EFG picked up for the Titans Finch. I mean, the map state is still pretty much even, and honestly, with the way the last EFG went, I don't know that it's a guarantee anymore to be able to say that the Titans are potentially looking to push us to game number 3. This is definitely the best spot they've been in the last 42 minutes, I would say, and it's a good position for them to be. I mean, knock down a tier 1 or tier 2, I should say, on left, as well as a Phoenix, and with one good fight under defense, maybe a poor defense from the Warriors, you could be able to win this game pretty handily in the next 4 minutes.
Titans certainly would like to win it. I don't know if we can call it handily. It's been tied for, feels like the whole game, but certainly couldn't blame them for taking care of it and feeling good about it afterwards. Either way it goes, the Titans looks like want to take a pit stop, though, at the Fury along the way. Maybe they don't. They were nearby. They'll just let Cyclone Spin take care of it. Everyone else just making sure no one's nearby for a steal. That's Oni waves now spawning for them as well, which they can use to start up this push. The tier 2 tower left the target initially. Tier 2 tower and right still standing, but if they can make it into the base from this point, they've got more than enough damage. That won't be a deterrent, but that's up on the Titan a bit more healthy as they send a couple back to make sure the wave picked up. And now we get to see how the Warriors can function on this base siege, if it indeed comes to be. A little over 2 minutes left for the Titans to test that defense of the Warriors.
Tier 2 should be pretty much all for naught at this point. Yeah, you're looking for your defense over here. Cuvo caught backing right now. If they get aggressive in the next 5 seconds, then maybe that's going to be a really big difference maker. But Paul's over here. Those portals are precarious. Paul has been, look, the playmaker for this one. I think there are several moments where the Titans have only held on because Paul's damage has just been so damn ridiculous to watch come out. Like, yes, you get some good crits from Cyclone, but realistically, Paul, whether it's space and time or unstable vortex, when he claps somebody, they feel it 8 ways to Sunday, and I think that that's going to be the case for a majority of the rest of this game as well. And this kind of positioning indicates to me that he's looking for a big ult.
Neil jumped in, couldn't find much more. But as you said, Paul has been the man keeping the Titans in it. Not single-handedly. There's the blinking from Aurora. Beads come out from Dardes in response. So Neoma engages, does grab Scary D, and get beads out from him in response. This left side Phoenix now low. Nika has been pushed out, Cuvo Fred as well. Only 3 actual on the actual Phoenix to try and keep it standing, and Cuvo Fred can't afford to get much closer than this. A wall comes up, but not enough when Paul's putting in the autos. Left side Phoenix goes down. The first one of this game, and it belongs to the Titans, who remove it cleanly. And now we're in position for a middle Phoenix as well. The Oni Warriors not quite keeping up. Finally able to move over and try and play some defense. This SMITE Phoenix still standing, but just barely.
And you have to remember those backdoor protections are non-existent with this EFG. Makes it a lot easier to do exactly what Benji's doing. Go in and force the fight, but Neil's going to be the one who jumps in.
That's right, able to get plucked, though, in response. Through space and time has been used. Looks like we'll have to wait to see how the rest of this team fight goes, though, right at the start. I believe that there had to be a pause. We'll get that all clarified for you in just a moment, but this could be a deciding moment of this game here, Gore, depending on how this goes. Either a chance for the Titans to find a way to get this win, extend us into a Game 3, or the Warriors can find a defense to get this game reset, and maybe even yet another EFG dance.
I mean, there's a lot of moments that really clap back there, and the big one is that Paul missed a lot of his damage.
He did. Mid-Phoenix goes down, and the Tartarus Titans now on the retreat. So 2 Phoenixes, mid and left, claimed. That's a successful trip for the Titans, but looks like they couldn't quite do enough to close the game all the way out, but still in a pretty big advantage state now.
I mean, like you said, this is one of those circumstances where technically you get to hold on long enough that there's an EFG on the board. Soon enough, the Warriors might be able to deal with this. And I was going to mention this last game. It was the Titans who had lost all of their Phoenixes, though, so it didn't make that much sense. But the Warriors losing 2 of their Phoenixes feels pretty good for Neil, right? Specifically Neil. I guess Neil plus Cuvo and Paul and Scary, I guess, on the other side. They both are going to be able to capitalize on that passive, both teams. But it'll be the question if the Warriors can come back from this one. It's very, very difficult. I mean, Fire Minions already at the, past the tier 1 line over there on left, past the tier 1 line there in mid, just now saved by Cuvo. So a lot of pressure on them to make sure that those minions just don't get in the way, don't get to the Titan, cause a lot of trouble. But you can't focus that hard on left, Finch. There's an EFG over here. You let that go, you might as well be losing the game. So the Titans are going to be hanging out over here. Vote's the one they opt to send back. He's going to be able to rejoin the fight pretty easily, but the fight's going to be happening with or without him. They got to get something going now.
Yilma up in the air. Vote has that left lane cleared as just about everyone from the Titans engage in the fight except for Cyclone takes care of that EFG. It goes to the Titans, and now the Warriors on a full retreat, but Neil Ma trying to keep them locked in. Dardes drops the ult onto Aurora as well. Cubo Fred has to give up beads as Benji comes in for the pull push. Crush used to keep the Titans at bay as Vote has to give up his beads. Great work by the Titans on the back of this EFG call to really make good work here of the Warriors. Able Cyclone spin to get rid of Neil. Vote goes down 2, and at this point the Titans in a pretty confident position to close this game out. It's just Nika, Cubo, and Dardes who have the ability to keep this game going. The Titan already down to half. They're going to need some kind of miracle coming from this backline damage to keep it going, but Dardes removed right away. No miracles happening today. It's the Titans in 48 minutes who take the game, and we're going into a Game 3.
All I've learned from these 2 games, Finch, is don't get a lead. Anybody who has the lead the first 30 minutes, it means nothing. You can forget it. You're going to lose the game. And so I think what my best advice to both of them is absolutely throw the early game at this point, because it does feel like we get to that 30-minute mark and things just start to fall apart. Slowly but surely, they crumble in front of whichever team has been able to pick up a lot. I think in this case, though, it maybe begs the differ. That Yanis... Man, that Yanis was just too much to handle. Like, there was a lot of team play in that. I think the engage all around, Neil wasn't able to do as much as what Ymir was bringing to the table there for Aurora. But at half the time, Paul was hitting these free. There wasn't stuns. There weren't walls always. He was just making sure to hit those ults, hit that unstable vortex, and the damage numbers, the health bars melted behind it.
Hey, maybe you can make your friends melt if you pick up a Smite jersey. We'll get a chance to see, maybe buying one and test the reaction. That's shop.smiteproleague.com. You can pick up some gear to represent your favorite squad and maybe even represent the Titans, who just now dragged this on to a game number 3. An impressive win for them, and you'd look impressive to all of your friends if you had that same gear going for you. It's going to be a quick break from us, though, and then we'll be right back to break down Game 2.
Welcome back to the SPL, powered, of course, by our friends over at Alienware. Hey, the only way that these pros were able to last that long in back-to-back games is playing on top-of-the-line gear, and that's what Alienware provides. SMITE AW, that's the code you want to use. SmiteGame.com/Alienware, that's the URL you want to use. So, code on that website, that'll get you some sweet Alienware gear. And then follow Alienware at Alienware on Twitter and Instagram as well. Shout out to Alienware one more time. And Aggro is with me to break down the set one more time. We're going to have to do it one more time after game 3. But Aggro, look, Degora, I think, said it right there. Apparently, if you have a lead here in this set, you're just not going to win. And apparently, if the game starts, it's going to go 45 minutes.
Yeah, it's been some knockdown, drag 'em out late game fights. And it seems like whatever team is being the initiators is usually losing. You know, I gotta give them credit where it's due to two players in particular. Paul in this game, I wasn't so sure about his pick, and I wasn't so sure about Cubo Fred on the Nemesis. I thought both of them played very well. Ultimately, it's obviously Paul who makes the bigger plays, though. How many through space and times did he hit on the right targets? How many times did Fred dies as Paul goes to the portal? Fred had Retribution Shield up, and that's a huge death to take in that moment, right? I mean, you end up losing quite a bit with Fred dying in that spot, because that fight then went on for an eternity after that fact.
Is that mechanic just unstable vortex as I'm flying through the portal, and if anyone tries to walk it,
it hides your animation. Nuts. Right, it hides your animation as you do it. So he caught Fred off guard. He's point blank, so it works. I mean, this Giannis pick for Paul, man. It's the power of this god is that when you're on, you feel really unstoppable. And this time, Cyclone was able to peel for himself much better on the Honor, and got better peel from Benji and from Aurora in this game in comparison. A lot of, low player damage numbers for how long this game went on, but it was a lot of poking and prodding, and then all-ins where a lot of people were getting insta-killed.
Yep, Paul has now, in one game, 7-1-6 on the Honest in the previous game. 5 combined kills in the last 2 times that he played Giannis, so one-upping himself there. The jungle war continues to rage on here, Aggro. Cubo Fred, hit or miss so far throughout this set. I think Scary D has been hit or miss so far throughout this set. The Robin, admittedly, in that early game, he ended 2-5-6, Scary D did. A win is a win. That's what's important. Scary D helped out there in the late game. But if either of these teams are trying to get these games over pre-40 or so odd minutes, you need a little bit more early jungle pressure, maybe.
Yeah, Fred was off to a really good start. I thought he played the early to mid game very, very well. You got to those late game team fights, and Nemesis can really struggle in those moments. It's kind of hard to find your spots. A lot of times you're more of a facilitator at that point, using your ultimate to help kill the tanks that your carries are able to hit, but that just never really came to fruition. Fenrir support, the longer these games go, it gets worse and worse because you're only there for the CC and don't bring any sort of relevant damage anymore. I don't know, man. Neither of these teams have looked squeaky clean, but neither of these teams have looked horrible to a point where I think this third game is going to be a blowout.
It did feel like these two would match up well with one another, given how the games have gone for both of these two teams here recently. You'd argue that the Titans came in with the hot hand into this matchup just because of the way their last 2 sets had looked. But we figured the Oni Warriors and the Titans would be a close matchup through and through. First big pivot in the pick ban phase here is the Nemesis gets taken away from Cubo Fred this time around. King Arthur still off the table. Morgan, Tiamat, Giannis. So Paul does not get to play any of those 3 gods here in game number 2. And it looks like Cubo Fred will have to play something different in the jungle.
Yeah, another day, another triple ban against Paul. He's been dealing with it basically his whole career, and it's crazy that he still gets he still manages to find these gods to look very, very strong on. And he's got a ton in the pool from here that, it's not like he's out of options now. He still has plenty of options, including the Scylla that we've seen Dardes pilot pretty well over these last 2 games. I'm a little surprised at the adjustment on the Nemesis ban, but I think that just understanding that Fred has gone to it as a comfort pick these last few games and making sure that the Titans can get something of value on this back end. They could Cullen pick, good for Benji, of course, but We haven't seen the Warriors prioritize Nika's pick super heavily quite yet, but I suppose they could have in that slot. I'd expect Scylla and Wukong probably here, or Tsukiyomi, because that is not banned away this time around.
Heimdall is the first of the final 2 picks that the Oni Warriors will have before the next ban phase. Sobek locked in first. This is an important game now for Neil. You're putting all of this stock in the first overall pick, Sobek, for good reason. Sobek has shown us how important that pick can be. I believe 0-5 last time we saw Neil on this pick, so a bounce-back game important here in Game 3 against the Titans. Scylla is locked in over for Dardes in the mid lane, but it's a Heimdall as well. To try to go toe-to-toe with what Cyclone Spin has been doing this set, I think we need to shine a light on Cyclone as well, because even in a loss earlier on in this set, Cyclone Spin has looked near unbeatable in some of these engagements. So the on her Heimdall lane has run back once more.
He's looked very, very good on it, but this time around we'll see if if Vote can make something a little bit better happen on the Heimdall in comparison to that Jingwei. A little bit more stand and fight potential. And of course, once you get ahead on Heim, it feels pretty hard to deal with because of his mobility and his self-peel tool. No surprise to me that the Titans ban away the 2 Warriors that Nika's played in this game. He has been a thorn in their side during this entire set. He's going to have to go to something a little bit different this time around. I'd anticipate a Kabrakan ban here from the Warriors because that's the pick that they've been banning from Aurora. They've clearly given that a lot of respect. But I think Aurora had a really good game on the Fafnir in Game 1 of this set. So a little bit surprised in that sense, but the Ymir is just such a strong pick to go up against. I like the ban. As Ganesh is the call.
Yeah, baby!
Man. Okay. Look, Dave, you know I'm a Ganesh lover as well. I do think he's underplayed. And in these games that go really long and these fights that are so back and forth that are all over the place, the Ganesh can work because his Dharmic Pillar's cooldown is a little bit lower. And sometimes you can get this really good value out of that ultimate. As it's tier for Nika, and now we're waiting on what I assume is going to be the pick here for Fred.
It is a Kamazot's hover right now for Kivo Fred. Important to stand up out of those Maxonomic chairs every once in a while, though you'll not want to stand up with how comfortable these seats are. That's what the Titans are doing. A little stretch before they head on into game number 3. Ratatosker is the pick for Kivo Fred in the 3rd and final game of this set. That rounds out the Oni Warriors draft. Does that finalize things pretty well in your mind?
Yeah, I like the Warriors draft. It's a lot of CC. It's a lot of CC on their side, but a lot of it is pretty heavily committal. You know, you're getting in there if you're going with these picks. You've got the Ganesh, which doesn't peel so super well against a lot of gods, but I think it peels very well up against Tyr because you can just silence him out of the Fearless, and then he doesn't have a whole lot of options. I'm a little surprised that Nika went with Tyr up against Ganesh because I do think that's one of Ganesh's better matchups, that he can actually peel a warrior effectively. A lot of times he really can't. You know, you think of someone like an Osiris who's just sticking to you and auto-attacking. You're going to silence him, and he's going to just keep on auto-attacking. So I'm a little surprised that's the direction that Nika goes. But the Titans draft feels much more early game focused. I don't think they scale particularly well in this matchup. And so for that reason, if these games are going to go long, I'm looking at what the Oni Warriors have, and they also don't scale super well. It's really just Dardes and Sobek who I think scale really well. Heim is also a pretty solid late game ADC, better than on her in that regard in my mind. So I guess I have to give it to the Oni Warriors just based on the fact that I think their comp scales slightly better, but both of these teams have drafted fairly early game in a set that has gone 45 minutes in both games.
Yeah, but then you have to consider that Ganesh doesn't have any bad matchups. It's the best god in the game at everything it wants to do.
Yes.
Better early, mid, and late game than any other god in the game itself, and so you have to take that into account. So the Titans have my vote.
Oh, okay.
Going into game 3. Early game's important here, Aggro, so jungle matchup in the early game is going to be very important as well. Do you think one has the ability to outpace the other in the first 10, 15 minutes of this game?
Both Robin and Ratatosker are gods that they can get ahead and be in every lane all of a sudden and just insta-kill you with a 3-1 from both of them. That you're going to get some kills. it's just a matter of not falling behind on these gods, because both gods feel incredibly underwhelming when behind. But for what it's worth, I'd rather be the Rat behind than the Raven, because at least on Rat, I've got hard CC. The Raven does as well with the Root, but that's it. That's the only hard CC you're really bringing. The rest of his kit is just damage and survivability. This Ratatosker can build a little bit more hybrid and then transition into a more facilitator role in the late game more easily than the Raven can.
Yeah, that semi-global presence, something that the Oni Warriors will look to capitalize on as this game starts to rotate on through. Neilma, I think, is the guy I kind of shined a spotlight on. You're going to give Neil this Sobek pick first and foremost overall. Neil's had some up and down moments not only this year, but so far throughout this set. I think it makes some sense, though. The Sobek pick is strong, and Neil is the type of player, when he gets swinging, this is a pick that he'll make work.
Definitely a strong option for him, and they've been looking to him to be this initiator. He was on the Ymir, he was on the Fenrir. Sobek, super easy on the initiation of what you're going to do. We're going to hit this guy, and we're going to toss him back towards the rest of the squad. Where's your really good pick option? It's probably going to be this Ganesh more often than not. Aurora's going to have to be very wary. Wouldn't be too surprised if we saw him pick up something like a Magi's because of all the CC that the Oni Warriors have.
Well, grab your seat, grab your popcorn. Game number 3 starts right now.
It does, but who knows when it will conclude. With these drafts, it could be early, but the way the set has gone, these teams might be locked in a life or death late game battle. Still Finch and Gore, still Doug, providing the views as we move on into this decider match. Gore, I talked about way back in Game 1 how critical this game could come to be in terms of momentum for one of these squads, and I think that's more true now that there's been 2 very close back and forth games already.
Yeah, and you got to look at it at the way things have been going. The Titans on a little bit of a kick now, right? Being able to finally pick up their streak. This would be a good one to keep things rolling. But kind of the inverse for the Warriors, right? They haven't been on a roll. In fact, anything but. They are actually on a 3-set loss streak. And so momentum shift is maybe the exact thing they need right now. Something to really get them cemented and back on the path they need. And Finch, I'm going to tell you, this is maybe getting too big picture, but looking at next week's schedule for both of these teams, it's not going to be easy for them to continue. The Titans have only one matchup next week, but they have the Kings that they're going to end up going up against.
They're pretty good.
The Warriors, guess who they have? Oh, not only the Kings, they also have to go through the Dragons as well. Not an easy week for either of these teams going forward. So momentum shift is dynamic and crucial for them. For the Warriors to maybe, get a win back under their belt and hopefully shift into that winning state as time goes forward. Or for the Titans to continue this win streak that they've slowly started up this week and maybe be able to continue that and hopefully steamroll a couple more in the future.
Let's take a look at these relics. Nika, Cubo, and Neil Ma with Blink. Just goes to show you they're not all that worried about the CC on the other side. Even though I think Paul and Aurora might make a pretty scary team in terms of their lockdown. 2 sets of Blink for Titans as well. Benji and Scary D both have one, and Aurora is back on this horrific emblem that he's been fond of lately. It can give you, in the early game, really good surprise potential for a kill if you can catch someone out with maybe their leap or dash down. And it doesn't get any worse once you get into the team fight stage there either. So maybe not as popular as some of the other starters like Shell or Blink, even Sprint, but certainly still strong here for Aurora. But that does indicate, I think, how these teams want to approach the pace. The Warriors, it looks like, would really like to engage these fights on the back of these Blinks.
Yeah, I'm anticipating a lot of pressure. I mean, Nika, I was almost to the point, I think they were hovering Kamazots there instead of Ratatosker for a little bit at the end. If that had been locked in, you would have heard me talking about Lass's jungle for tier and things like that. I would have been going very, very deep into history. But I think, like you say, especially with Cubo's Blink, but with Nika when he starts rotating over as well as Neil with those Blink plucks, there's so much engage on the side of the Warriors this time around, which admittedly is going to be easier to pull off.
Good work from Nika and Cubo. Fred able to get the kill as a result. First blood goes to the Warriors, and that was the Titans walking in and saying, hey, we're taking this blue buff, but not on Nika's watch. This tier does so much damage and displacement simultaneously. And I don't even think the Titans realized how much trouble they were in.
I can't be the only one, but I was kind of caught off guard by how quick that happened. Like, I saw Nika go for the Fearless, I'm ready to drop. By the time I finished the sentence, Scary D was dead. I mean, there was no way for him to survive through that one. No beads, nothing to be able to get through there. And this is actually a conversation we were having, I guess it was, what, last game? Maybe 2 games ago. But that question of whether or not it is truly worthwhile for him when he's on this Raven to have those beads early on, because this time around, you know, it's going to be a lot more difficult, I think, all around to survive throughout what the CC and everything that the Warriors have to set things up. So I think there's a lot more pressure.
And he does land onto Aurora, but they ended up too far. Cubo was trying to wait and see if the Warriors could get the Titans to commit a little further out of their base. He was kind of their goal fury pit, trying to line up an ult, but that never materialized. The Titans stayed home. They didn't have to give up any relics in that defense there either. Cubo Fred's first ult doesn't net him a kill, but hey, he already got one just defending his blue earlier.
And that's exactly what you need, right? Being able to find that. Again, it would have been nice if that duo lane had gone a little more their way. I think they were not necessarily planning on the brilliant pillar block on the pluck coming down from Cyclone Spin, right? If that doesn't come through, it's a lot easier for Cubo to isolate someone. Once again, Nika's damage is just absolutely insane there on the Scary D. And Scary D, look, like, that's just the 1v1. He gets taken down to half health in a Fearless. Like, you have to be way more careful, I think. And that's starting to make me question the pressure he can get over here on the right-hand side of the map. I'm not sure that there's going to be much with the way that Nika is playing right now. So more pressure on Titans to figure out where they can clap back. There again, I mean, they highlighted on the desk, but Finch, there's a lot of CC here. There's a lot of appeal potential. There's a lot of engage potential. Like, the Warriors, I just like their team draft a little bit more, and I think the later and longer this game goes on, probably the better overall for people like Aurora, for Cyclone, maybe Paul in terms of damage. But everyone save for Ratatoskr scales to a better late game for the Warriors.
And no one was in the position to defend that. Benji ends up scrapping with Cubo Fred a bit, but now Nika might have to give up the Lawbringer to escape. No, Scary D gives up on the chase. Aurora not in position. And Nika might be able to just walk on out of here, defend his own blue buff successfully, and revenge gotten by this Order side team. Defend that blue buff that first time, get first blood, then they go for an invade and get back to their own. Still isn't resulting in any huge global leads yet for the team, but the Warriors have done a good job controlling that right side. And as you were saying, Gore, the Warriors, I think Aggro agreed with you, likely going to scale better into this late game on several of their picks. So the Titans kind of needed that early blue buff pressure to go their way, and the Warriors responded well.
And that response has really kept them falling behind. Again, slowly but surely, there's a little bit with the first blood bounty now, pushing just a little under 1,000 gold in favor of the Warriors. And a good pluck from Neil to start things off again.
Aurora pulled in, but I'm a Monster will not connect. Aurora dashes out, and Neil Ma has to go through the Dharmic Pillars. It is too much damage. Paul able to get that kill with the Taiko Drums, but Nika is involved in this fight, way out-rotating Binti, who never left. And Scary D low Cubo Fred somehow, none of that flurry connects, doesn't matter. He gets there in the end anyway. They turn that into a 2-for-1 engagement where they lose Neil at the start, but get Aurora and Scary in trade. So Benji, since he didn't rotate, going to take this opportunity to invade some camps.
Man, I wanted to be able to go on a spiel if it had been just 1-for-1, or better yet, 1-for-0, about how great Dharmic Pillars is, and I still think it is. I still think it's going to be a big impact. There's a lot of moments here where that ult from Aurora is going to guide and maybe break the Warriors in some of these team fights. But unfortunately for him, Scary D, this time Cubo on the other side is the one that's really piloting things forward. Neil, though, is really deep and alone right now. Luckily for him, the Titans just don't seem interested in killing Sobek, so he's going to be able to get out of that one for free, but it definitely feels like it could have been a free kill for them.
Yeah, maybe not one to commit. He didn't have Lurking in the Waters, and they likely had an idea that it was close, and probably not up since he used it on that Dharmic Pillars to try and escape last time. But not all in committing for the support, I think I can understand. Looks like the call from the Chaos team, though, is this Greater Scorpion. Bunch of pings are coming out on it. Aurora and Scary D here. little bit of backup from Cyclone if he does make his way over, but he does not. Neil returns back to his mid-tier 1 for safety. And the Greater Scorpion not grabbed. Maybe it's a red buff invade instead. They had a ward on, and they're the first ones there, as Nika's Lawbringer allows him to escape, and now the red buff indeed being looked at by the Titans. No way the Warriors can step in. So it wasn't Greater Scorpion. They had 2 wards down. This was all about the red buff invade.
O'Neal had an awkward stance. I was waiting to see if something was going to happen, but they just kind of looked at each other in a menacing manner. And putting the fear in their hearts didn't necessarily do anything. So being able to fall back feels good for them. I think on the side of the Warriors, no matter what now, being able to pull, oh no, still not quite 1,000 gold ahead. They're just hovering at that mark. So I think Cuvo is where I put some pressure on, and well, I get the answer almost immediately. At least Forp gonna go down for him early on here. But I was hoping for more gank style pressure that comes through. That being said, it's kind of difficult to choose someone to gank. I mean, you jump in onto someone like Paul, this Raijin. Well, he just thunder crashes away. Oh, okay, I'll go for on her. Nope, he just jumps away. There has to be a lot more planning behind the ganks here, and Cubo, I don't think is going to find a lot of scenarios where he's going to be able to capitalize on that. So probably just waiting for the team fights. And since they get both Scorpions on the side of the Warriors, that does mean they're open for some of those objectives. About 30 seconds-ish until Pyromancer's going to spawn here. Gold Fury should be a little bit quicker over there for the Warriors if they decide that they want to start putting some pressure on the left side of the map.
Once again, Q afraid able to just walk up and take the blue buff. No one there, so they get it. Last time the Titans were on time for red buff invade. I wonder if they're going to look for that one again, as the blue buff defended. Can't get there in time. Is Benji in that rage form. His Vote Cyclone Spin trade blows over in left. The Fury now up. The red buff not too far from spawning either. And look at this pathing Neil has taken. He's way topside on the Gold Fury now. It's unclear if Cyclone Spin's aware. I don't even know if he's in that much danger, though, as the Titans are now grouping up for another red buff invade. Cyclone Spin jumps away, and now these Warriors should have remembered that what happened last time with the red buff, and they're hanging around with Cyclone instead and stuck in this weird pincer maneuver. Odd decision-making from the Oni Warriors top to bottom, and now Vote caught up in the same thing, tries to use the ultimate to get into the Bifrost, and it will permit his escape. And the Titans not able to get the red, it looks like this time. They instead came over and took that kill quite happily.
Admittedly, kind of like watching a car wreck. Like, everything there felt like slow motion for us. Like, you could see the movement of the Titans and slowly but surely the grip on the Warriors closing in. I'd say lucky for the Warriors that it only results in a single kill onto Neil, that Vote still gets out alive. Admittedly, having to use his beads, but now Tartarus is so deep, misses the Emma Monster.
But Paul is low, and Cubo Fred there, and they manage to find a kill. The silence keeps Cubo Fred locked in. He cannot get up to the Tree of Yggdrasil in time. Cyclone Spin finds a kill of his own as they trade jungle for mid lane. Cubo Fred goes down, Paul as well. And Nika using that Lawbringer to escape. Neil Ma does find a dash. Crush cannot connect, and Aurora able to make his way back to that Tier 1 tower. Close on that one. The Warriors still seem to be coming out ahead. They're maybe about 1,000, a little less ahead, and they're going to try and find a red buff invade successfully with Nika, who has been all over the map. Looks like, though, at that same time, Benji going to defend his own blue. Their blue is a little desynced. He can't go for an invade. But across the map, the Warriors do seem to be slightly ahead at this point.
Oh, hey, that's dangerous. Look, in 30, 40 minutes, that's going to be their downfall, right? Like, I mean, that has been the way things have been going for this game. Takes a while to lose. The team that's been ahead in the first 10 has gone down in the last, well, I guess 10 for each game, wherever you want to throw that. I also think there was a moment there, Nika, unfortunately not able to get the damage he wants. Now they're going in on Scary D.
They are, and the Fearless, it's been doing it all game. And it continues there. Scary D finds himself looking at the grayscale yet again. A 20-second death timer for him. And Nika and Cuvo Fred have been all over the place. And it's not just on the right side of the map. It's been here in mid and even for invades too, as Neo Ma off the mark with the pluck. Is inside lurking in the waters. No control will pull him back in, so he will escape. But Neil has been up there going for these Hail Mary plays. I don't know if there's any need for it when so far the Titans have responded well. I like the idea Paul didn't have beads, and if he catches him out, sure, they're able to get the kill likely, but gotta make sure he's being careful. That's one of the ways the Titans have been using to keep things close, is killing Neil.
And there is like a threshold, I think, again, on support's lives where they're an important factor in team fights, and the 5v5 grouping makes them a high priority. If you can get rid of them or at least displace them, that's fine. But for some of the early game, killing them a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth time doesn't necessarily mean as much. But this is Gold Fury started up and pretty easily secured there by the Warriors. Roar almost on time with those Dharmic Pillars, but not quite. I mean, I was thinking there was going to be a lot more pomp and circumstance around that one, Finch. If I'm being honest with you, like I thought that we were going to be hyping it up. I thought there was going to be a crazy big team fight. And ultimately, the Warriors just kind of decide that it's time to do it. Now, the Pyromancer might be a different story, but that's only because Scary D's over here. Neil, for the first time, it feels like this game not going to be ridiculously aggressive, not going to be able to find that kill or at least set up for it. And I feel like we've been seeing it. You had kind of highlighted it. Neil's been in the face of the Titans. But he hasn't been using his blink to close the gap. Like, he's just kind of been running at them for a majority of this.
Pyromancer now in the sights. Benji's nearby, but he's doing Totem of Coup. I'm not even sure if he does know. If he does know, he doesn't want anything to do with it. And this Pyromancer with Crush down, gonna be close. The Warriors secure that and the Gold Fury. But still, this gold lead not crazily out of control. Certainly within reach of the Titans, who are stepping up for a blue buff invade. Cubo Fred here alongside Nika, and it looks like they did defend that blue. Nice work from Nika with the Fearless to get back underneath the Tier 2 tower, because his Tier 1 is gone. That was good pressure that Benji was able to find whilst Nika was elsewhere on the map. It does open up this right side a bit more.
I was curious. It's like, well, you know, you defended it. Why not pick it up? And then I realized Nika's running around with a red buff around his waist, so he's feeling pretty confident in terms of his damage. His damage has already been pretty ridiculous to see and deal with. So maybe not surprising to see him want that even more so here. So they get aggressive, but again, it's almost been 3 games at this point of death by 1,000 cuts, right? Like, small leads that transition to slightly bigger but still small leads. I mean, even here, Neil, like, you get a big pluck, but is there going to be enough follow-up to find anything? It feels slow pace for the Warriors. Now Nika's jumping in.
Yeah, they have been looking for fights, and a Roar hit by the Crush, and Dardes finds his first kill of the game, though he has been involved in these skirmishes in mid. And Nika, my man seems unconcerned with that solo title he was given. He's everywhere. Cyclone Spin's beads forced out by Neomar going for a pluck, so Cubo Fred comes in. Desert Fury will dissuade any further aggression. In fact, Cyclone Spin jumps forward, and Neomar now in trouble, especially with Paul coming over the top. And Neomar ends up dropping. The rest of the Oni Warriors completely disengage, and Neil left in a bad spot. Votes Bifrost takes him back topside, and now he's on the wrong side of the map. We're going to have to continue to run. Maybe Nika can buy him some time. He does by getting in and removing the beads from Paul. Vote comes back in, and they force Paul to drop both his relics in response. And Vote should be able to make it out of here. No, Benji has made it onto him with a blink. There's the ultimate, and Vote gets back to the Tier 1 as there's all kinds of action happening in this mid.
Now, the thing that I think stands out the most to me in that one, Finch, and tell me if you've heard this one before, Cyclone Spin jumps in, doesn't seem like a good scenario for him. Cyclone Spin then beats down 2 members of the opposing team. That's just been this set. He did it in Game 1, he did it in Game 2, he's done it in Game 3. Like, I feel like Cyclone Spin is a very difficult target to try and take care of. He's a high-priority target, but every time they seem to try and engage on him or deal with him, he just beats them down. Like, the minute he gets the chance, it feels like it should be advantageous fights. It feels like the Warriors shouldn't have any reason to worry about it. But so far, this on her, I think, 2 games in a row now, the Heimdall earlier for him, have just been a real pain to deal with. And I'm starting to think the Warriors need to start looking somewhere else. I mean, it's difficult. You don't want to let him live. But really, fighting him has not been going that well, so I feel like you just do your best option to not interact with Cyclone Spin as long as possible. But with those beads down for another 50 seconds, maybe that's the opening, maybe that's the key for these teams, and specifically, I guess, for the Warriors, for Neil or Nika. Maybe even Cubo to jump into the backline and try to lock him down, open up the conversation for someone like Vote or Dardes to pick up a kill.
Might not be a bad time for this Fury spawn to do a build roundup. Spectral on Nika and Neoma already, not for the Titans just yet. So the front line of the Warriors have an easier time dealing with crit. It's on Kile as the call for Cuvo, so he has an easier time on Paul on these dives. And look where Paul is in his build. It's Charon's Corn, those purple boots, and then into Breastplate of Valor. And now Neoma engaging. Paul responds with an ultimate of his own, and I think Paul had to do that. Neil knew he had no relics, and they couldn't quite find the punish. But with Taiko drums down, the Warriors should go in with some of those item roundups we covered, plus that ultimate down, pretty favored if they want to start up this Fury.
Charon's Coin for both these teams. Definitely stacking a little bit better over there for Benji, as he's been having it, or not Benji, for Paul, than he's had it going versus what Dardes just recently picked up, so hasn't been able to pick up any of those stacks just yet. But still, it's one of those items that's really good at base already, and then it just enhances as you pick those up. So it's not necessarily a bad pickup for Dardes, but it is going to take a little longer. And with the way the pace of these have been going, honestly, it still feels like it's going to take either of them a long time. There's the Dharmic Pillars to get things started for this one, though.
And that does force a disengage from the Warriors early, but Kufo, Fred, and Nika seem to like their chances up against Benji, who's about to get real angry, and Kufo Fred forced to escape as Benji literally changes bodies on this right side. Nika moves in with the Fearless, controls him for a bit, but nothing that will result in a kill. Meanwhile, the Titans have now pulled the Fury themselves. Vote nearby, Neoma here as well, but the Fury down below half, down to a quarter. But it ends up being reset. The Titans grab it up again at the very last moment and do grab the objective. So even though the Warriors start that fight off seeming to have control, it's the Titans who get the objective, and now Nika in a bad spot. Lawbringer over the wall so he can pull the Titans away. Vote and Dardes want to come help their solo laner if they can. Nika makes it back to them with a nice blink, and the Titans get the Fury, but looks like no additional kills.
And there's not much for them to run or scurry to afterward. I mean, Pyromancer's up on the other side of the map. That's usually a pretty good spot to jump over and try to conquer. But I don't know if this is going to be the time to envelop that one. Well, they are slowly but surely walking into it. I mean, Nika's not here. Yeah, the Heimdall backed. Vote's no longer around. Feels like they should be able to secure this. Definitely no time for a big fire giant. They're going to be able to get away scot-free running that one through. Still not a lead just yet, but again, Finch, it feels like the death by 1,000 cuts. Slowly but surely, they're starting to pick things up. They lose a tier 1. At the end of the day, it's still 5 towers versus 5 towers. I feel like I'm starting to sound like a broken record. 20 minutes in, this feels like the same game state we've seen twice now.
Yeah, the Warriors had a good early game going with the Titans just now with great responses across the map. Fury and Pyro were able to bring this game right back towards even. That does mean the discussion we had coming out of the desk and including the desk about who scales into this late game better is now relevant. Looks like Benji and Scary D have found experience leads over their counterparts on the Oni Warriors side. Dardes is ahead of Paul a bit. Things are even in support, and Vote gets to 20 a bit ahead of Cyclone Spin. Already has that Ornate Arrow finished. Maybe that's enough for them to feel comfortable starting up this FG, because they sure do. They've got all 4 members on it. On zoning duty is Nika, but in comes Aurora for a chance to contest. Crush already down. I'm a Monster used. He drops it, and the Warriors able to get the Fire Giant confirmation. But Dardes has got to run. He's solo, and Aegis the only thing keeping him alive. Meanwhile, Scary D and Benji work together to take the FG off of Vote by putting him down and into the ground. So Cubo Fred got to run, but where could he run to with Scary D re-engaging? The FG call was risky. They get the objective but lose 2 lives in the process, and now a good chance they're going to lose this tier 2 as well, and maybe even Neo Ma as he gets locked down. A third claimed by the Titans on the backside of that FG.
Yeah, hints of game 1 where, once again, your victory is that the Titans don't have the FG, and they're not going to be able to get one after a very monumental fight here. So, theoretically, all of these towers, 5 still standing, make it 4 when this one falls down. Well, it's going to be a pain and a long time for the Titans to work their way through all of those. So you slow them down if you're the Warriors. That's your consolation prize this time around. But they don't get anywhere near as many people left alive with the FG that they would like. So another one where every time, if I look up in the top left, I see power play and it says negative gold on it. It's just so ridiculous to me. It's happened 3 times for the Warriors across 3 different games. But at the end of the day, they're stripping away the power from the Titans. and keeping the game seemingly a little more under control for them. It definitely pushes it a little more to the limits, because guess what? Nothing monumental is going to happen realistically for the Warriors until the next objective comes up. A little under 2.5 minutes there for the Furies. But you're looking at another 3.5 minutes before an FG, and ultimately we might not really see much out of either of these teams until that one comes back at the 26.5 minute mark.
Just goes to show you the difference in this jungle value, though. Cubo has been much more active across the map and has helped his team get into good positions, but he's way behind Scary D, who with an 0-3 KDA with 6 assists, he's been a part of all their kills, yes, has been able to get way out in front. We got to give Scary D some credit. New to this jungle road, and Cubo Fred, one of the best who has ever done it, certainly in our top 3, if not just second, right there behind Adapting. Maybe Sam kind of closing up on him for that spot, but for Scary to be keeping even with him, that is impressive, more than even ahead. And now we'll get a chance to see if the Titans can get the whole squad ahead. A minute 4, well, not the Titans, but a minute 40 left for the Warriors on FG, but perhaps it's the Titans that feel like they can get aggressive. It is the Fury about to spawn here in a moment. Couple members of the Warriors are right next to it, but they sent Dardes back to base so that he could reset. Looks like Restored Artifact picked up for him. He's ready to get back into the action as well. Meanwhile, look at this from Nika. Is he looking for Cyclone Spin all alone? That is the call. Gets beads out from Cyclone Spin as well for his trouble. All Nika had to commit. It looks like it wasn't even a blink. He used Lawbringer to get there and take those beads.
Well, that's a good start for him, being able to burn the beads onto someone like Cyclone. Again, it's been difficult to deal with Cyclone. There's going to be a puck from Neil into some damage, but onto Benji of all people, I don't think it matters that much. In fact, the Titans maybe come out of that one feeling a little better grouped, but it does force the Titans over here in the mid lane very far away. Red buff just now respawning. Maybe they want to focus on that, but the Fury is the real conversation, and the Warriors have a better stance inside the Fury pit. But control of it is not what I would call it. They definitely are just hanging around here waiting for the Titans before they can maybe get another pluck from Neil. Try to work their way to a kill. Nika's in a really good strategic backline position as well. Blink available.
Like no.
Should be able to get him, but no, yeah, they spot him out, and so unfortunately for him, he's going to have to give that up.
And he does fall back. Seems like the Titans had some information on it. Cyclone Spin going to take a back here. I don't really think there's any way for the only Warriors to have that information as Nika and Benji move their solo lane fight from solo to the long lane. Looks like Benji the one that gives up the ground there. The Fury completely open as Neomar pushed up beyond it and trying not to let the Titans walk in, but it looks like a collapse is in the cards from the Titans on to Nika, who's a bit alone over here. Now the cavalry arriving as they turn their attention towards Neil, but in comes the Sikkim in to crush. That collects 3, but Neomar still dying too quickly as Scary D finds that one. Nika does collect Cyclone Spin, who has no beads. Cupo Fred there to pick up the baton, but Paul getting aggressive with the Thunder Crash, and Nika removed. The only Warriors have bungled this Gold Fury fight, and the Titans happily pick up the pieces.
I mean, it could be a tier 1 if they turn their attention over there, but no, Finch, they're just chasing under the T2. They have damage. Dardes seems to be the target right now. That Sentinel's going to be able to get him out of there. He's safe, but look, you trade one really good pick for another one. Vote. Going to be using his Aegis, but at this point, yeah, not going to be able to escape too far. Some Phoenix damage is coming through while tier 2s are still up. In fact, a tier 1 still exists there in mid. Cyclone with a beautiful break throughout that one to make sure that that fight continues not only to be in their favor, but just better. So early game lead, once again for the Warriors, turns into, well, so far failing fights, but I would even argue that the CC, the way we highlighted, the setup, the potential to engage on fights that the Warriors have has really not mattered. I mean, how many times, like, Neil's 0-5, almost every time he goes for a pluck, it's not resulted in a kill, it's not really been able to bring them much, and more often than not, it's just put him in the Wolves' den with the Wolves who are very hungry. And I feel like that's about to happen to Cubo if he jumps in here.
Cubo does jump down, but Cyclone Spin leaps the dive from Cubo Fred, and he instantly is sent to the afterlife. Cyclone Spin gets Dardes coming off the objective. Neomar knows it's low, but it looks like the objective still gonna stay low. Only person that dies is Cyclone Spin as Nika gets there, but the Titans should get this enhanced Fire Giant. No real way for Nika to make his way in there. The Titans get the biggest objective on the map, and they've got a good chance to lock down Nika here too if they can catch up. Beads even coming out from, because he knows how much in danger he's in. Thunder Crash there, Nika forced to use the dash, but just nothing he can do, even though he gets Paul's beads on the tail end, and with no one up for another 13 seconds except for Vote, maybe a chance for some structures to finally go down in favor of the Titans.
It's that awkward moment, 28 minutes into the game. Oh yeah, I guess we should kill this Tier 1. It's going to fall no problem. Tier 2, probably going to fall no problem as well. Cyclone Spin has been an absolute menace when it comes down to damaging these structures. Although, of course, I say that. This one is taking a little longer. Gives enough time for Cuvo and Dardes to spawn back up. So good Phoenix defense starting to arrive for the Warriors. Luckily for the Titans, they're not worried that much about that. They're going to be able to fall back. And that Fury was never taken. The fight might have faltered, but ultimately there's more gold ready in the pockets. I want to see the backs and the money spent. I mean, look at the golden hand. 3K sitting up there for Paul, almost 3K for Scary D, 2,800, now 2,900 for the jump on Cyclone Spin. They're going to have some pretty hefty buys. And man, I would argue at this point, Neil's just lucky that the team actually got back before he did that. Otherwise, it would have been another kill.
Neil has been wild in this set today. That pincer they were looking for on Gold Fury, I think the Titans realized that the prongs of that pincer were not even. They turned around from the Nika part of those prongs, went for Neil Ma and said, no pincer here. They collapsed on him, blew him up right away. And now the Warriors are just, instead of being in a pincer maneuver, just in a bad fight. And the Titans able to capitalize pretty well on the back. And now in a great position to make a push with Fire Giant on everyone except for Cyclone Spin. Not enhanced around their waist just yet, but I think Cyclone's still going to do plenty of damage to these structures anyway. They've got them all except for the Phoenix is down, so this is a left side Phoenix push, and the only Warrior is going to have to come up big on the defense, down quite a lot of gold.
And this is such a weird defense to try and make. Look, Cyclone Spin not having EFG, that's great news for the Warriors. But at the same time, everybody else having it, that's bad news. Cyclone Spin's going to be grouped up on left. He's going to be hanging out probably with Paul, Aurora, maybe Benji as well, but Benji right now is in mid. Scary or Benji have the capability right now to just completely split push a Phoenix. And if the two of them go together, one can keep a single member of the Warriors occupied, the other one can focus the Phoenix, and that's why you see this awkward split from the Warriors, trying to figure out where they want to put their pressure to try and slow down the Titans.
I think Cyclone may have popped a 3K pot too, and was in that second slot there for him. We'll see if he's got that telltale glow, or if he's just doing way more damage than should be right. He moves into that left side Phoenix. The split is, as you say, Paul, Aurora, and Cyclone Spin. The backline plus the support in left. Then is the jungle and solo over in right. But Paul kind of hanging out in the mid, looking for poke he can find through these doors in the middle. And the Titans are going about this one patiently. No need to overcommit. Wait for their wave to come in left. Wait for this wave to push it in mid. And now Benji and Scary D can dive. Cubo Fred forced to take to the sky with his ultimate as his left side Phoenix down to half. Cyclone Spin jumps away from Cubo Fred's ultimate. Cool as you like. And then use those taunts to pull in Neil. The mid Phoenix will fall to the pressure from Benji and Scary. Cyclone Spin gets the kill onto Neil. So left side Phoenix about to fall as well. And they've completely broken open the base here of the Oni Warriors, who won Game 1, but that was actually 2 hours ago at this point in the game. I wonder if it feels like they've got any momentum as Cubo Fred blinks in looking for Paul, who does seem to have reacted with the beads, but gives up nothing else. The right side Phoenix should be in their sights pretty cleanly at this point, with Nika and the boys coming back towards Aurora, coming back towards Scary D. And that Crush will get at least that one kill as the Titans move on. The minions move on to the actual Titans, and the rest of the Titans have to leave on that right side Phoenix.
This is where they're a little lucky that they happen to have minion waves going through. That was a good fight from the Warriors. Granted, they lose two Phoenixes in the process. Their base is completely broken open. The right-hand Phoenix is at half health. There is definitely a silver lining of, hey, a good fight on the back of bad things, but they still managed to get some pressure. And actually, the Fire Giant coming up as soon as it is, this might actually put them into a position to snatch an EFG for themselves. 32 minutes in, be the first one of the game really able to open up the conversation for knocking down those towers. It is by no means the way to win the game for the Warriors, but it is definitely a way to strip the lead from the Titans, slow that pace down, equalize out some of the pressure over there in left and mid. They have to get this Fire Giant first. Paul, as well as the rest of the Titans, might have something to say about it.
Yeah, the Warriors are going to go for this play, then it absolutely has to come to fruition. They have to get the Fury and get out of here without giving up any lives. Benji being the disruptor. Tycho drums from Paul, and Neomon falls.
no.
Paul gets Cubo Fred. The Warriors do get FG, yes, but 3 members have fallen in the effort. Cyclone Spin standing tall, but Nika able to at least get that kill. They need to get rid of Vote, and Benji does the job. Nika comes in looking for Paul, but his Thunder Crash at his feet. It's a double. It's a deicide, and the Tartarus Titans with 30 seconds plus on the shortest timer are taking this set right here and right now.
More archers than one can count on the right-hand side get the Phoenix for him. That Titan's going to go down before they even get there, Finch. That is a clean fight. 8-1-11. Look, I think Paul had a really, really stellar game 2, a really stellar game 3, but him, Cyclone, as well as Benji, all 3 of them kind of the pillars, set up so much success at the end there. I think Scary is an assist machine throughout game number 3, and you get a lot more setup from Aurora, and realistically, what you get out of them is good counterplay. Every time Neil went in, they shut down that Sobek almost instantly, and it just never felt like the engage from the Warriors was enough. Not until the end, and even then, they ended up biting way more than they could chew in the last 30 seconds of the game where they jump into that fight. It just feels so good for them, and then so bad, all in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, things went real wrong for them there. I mean, that was a Hail Mary from its inception from them, so a tough call,
true.
I think, to try and make that one happen. But this is huge for the Titans, who have struggled at the start of this phase, who had all this weight on their shoulders as, you know, a super team, in quotes, is needing to live up to being part PK, part Radiance. Now, taking care of that other one, the Warriors, I think, give them some great momentum going forward. We're going to be breaking all this down, and don't forget, getting ready for a whole other set of Smite on the back end of this break.
And just like that, the Tartarus Titans find themselves on a 3-set win streak after a slow start here to Season 8, thanks in large part to our friends at Alienware, who have outfitted them with a whole bunch of awesome gaming gear to play on. Alienware, our title sponsor here in Season 8 of the SPL. And if you want a game like the pros as well, use code SMITEAW at smitegame.com/Alienware and check out all the sweet deals we got going, depending on your region. But go online, check it out, and maybe pick up something nice for yourself. Aggro is here with me to break down Game 3 and the set overall. Mike tweeted just now after Game 3 there, and I don't want to misquote him, but the general idea was very against the grain, as Mike normally is, and he said, I think Paul is very good at the game of Smite, and I think that's a pretty good way of summarizing this one.
Yeah, I know Mike's really going out on a limb there, but I guess I'll join him. Paul pretty good at this game. Listen, when we're talking about dudes who have the potential to take over a set and make individual plays that other players will not, Paul near the top of that list for a reason. He was unstoppable in this set. The Giannis in games 1 and 2 was solid, in particular in game 2, but game 3 on this Raijin, remember, they banned 3 of his gods at the top of the phase, and then he still got to last pick something that looked this good for him. Just an impressive set from him, but he couldn't have done it without the front line. I thought Aurora's Ganesh was actually very impactful. That first Fire Giant that the Warriors got was really ruined because of what Aurora did to Dardaz, nearly one-shot him on the firewall. And then Benji, of course, on this Kukulkan looked nearly unstoppable.
Yeah, this Titans team really starting to swing here. I mean, the Oni Warriors have picked up some of their slack as well, so this is not a scoffable laugh of a win here for the Tartarus Titans. The Oni Warriors have really started to show up in a few of their sets, despite not having won more than just one here just yet. So a great win for the Tartarus Titans, a great win for Paul and Cyclone Spin as well, who showed up all day today, and the rest of the Titans team as well. 8-1-11 for Paul, 6-2-9 for Cyclone Spin. And Benji undying here in game number 3. Do you have a prescription here for the Oni Warriors team, Aggro? Is it work out some of the issues? It's a long season, plenty of time to figure out some of what's going wrong, and then obviously we've talked about ping, things like that. That'll change moving forward in the future as well. Is it just time you think that the Oni Warriors need?
I do think it's just time. I mean, this team is super talented. We know that. We know that. In particular, their mid 3v3 core is not playing as well as they have throughout their careers, and I think it is fair to give them the excuse, at least for a little bit, of their situation. But, I mean, eventually they're going to have to figure it out one way or another. You know, Fred starts off this game 3-0, finishes 3-4. You want to be able to leverage that lead a little bit better than he did. I think that those three, Fred, Neil, and Dardaz, finding their stride together is what this team is missing right now.
There is a world where tomorrow, if the Camelot Kings beat the Bolts, we have a 4-way tie. I guess the losses would then break that tie, but if you're looking strictly at wins, if the Kings win tomorrow, you'll have 4 teams at 4 wins, and then Tartarus Titans picking up a win. So you have 6 teams, Aggro, right now, one game away or tied for first place here in the SPL, and then a couple teams needing some growth to get back up there. The remainder of the schedule for the weekend on your screen now. The Leviathans versus the Valkyries. So, if the Leviathans win, they'll be in sole possession of first place until, depending what happens tomorrow. It gets all muddled, but could still have a 3-way tie for first place going into tomorrow. Plenty of competition to separate all these teams. But we have seen a lot of very close-knit games. All of these teams continuing to grow and change and really build up into an exciting start to Season 8 here in the SPL. The Tartarus Titans, though, they find themselves on a 3-set win streak after what was a tough start to the year. They've really started to pick things up here, and Paul, the man himself, shows up again here today, and he'll show up again in the post-game interview.
That's right. I have Paul here with me, and first, congrats on this big win, man. Talk to me about what it means for you to still have a really good game, even though they're spending basically the whole beginning of the ban phase just trying to ban you out.
Raijin's just a solid pick, and they used a lot of bans on me, but Raijin still is just solid. So I don't know. I just get to pick it and have some fun.
Well, those were some long games. I think game 1 and 2 were at least 45 minutes each, right around there. Game 3 about 35 minutes. What's it mean to win a long, really close set like that one for the team to prove you guys can go long as well up against a good team?
It feels really good to beat actually like I think Oni Warriors are a pretty solid team, so it definitely is a big morale booster for us to win that. So it feels really good, and everyone's spirits are really high, but we still have a lot to work on.
Well, what is it that helped you guys kind of turn this corner? I mean, we're seeing the results on the screen. You all look better. It looks like you're playing better. But has it just been time and getting to know each other a little bit better? Is that kind of all you guys needed?
Yeah, just a lot of scrims, a lot of practice, like a lot of communication between us, just figuring out how we like to play, what picks we like. It just takes time, pretty much.
And you all have put that time to good use. Do you think it's time, though, that maybe you guys get a little bit more respect on your name? I know you started off a bit slow, but now 3-3, you're up there kind of with everyone else in the middle of the pack right now. Do you feel like you guys deserve maybe a bit more of the credit coming your way?
Maybe a little bit more respect.
You're going to get involved on any of this Twitter drama for us, though, Paul. That's what we really all want to know on our end, if we're going to catch you out there dropping anything else for us later on today.
Maybe
A little bit. All right, man. Well, appreciate you taking the time to talk to us here. We got another big set coming up, so we're going to go ahead and throw it to a break. Then we'll be right back. It'll be more of me, even though you just got 125 minutes of me on the desk.
Thanks.